Chapter 1201. Qin Yu made up his mind, but there were some things that he had to understand in advance. His gaze turned around and landed on Ruan Jing. Of the four people in front of him, he was the most talkative. Those who were talkative usually loved to ask around, so they should know more than others. Ruan Jing, I have a question. Ruan Jing was overjoyed. Brother Qin, please ask. As long as I know, I will definitely tell you the truth. That's good. Qin Yu nodded. Has the master of the peach blossom spring grasped the spatial laws? This question was different from what he had imagined. Ruan Jing was stunned for a second. He suddenly felt that things had gotten a little worse. Peach blossom spring. Qin Yu was just a native. How would he know about the peach blossom spring? Now that he had asked such a question, it was obvious that he was referring to something. But since Qin Yu had asked, he could not and did not dare to not answer. His gaze swept over the paper, Zhou Lei, and the sword cultivator who had opened his eyes. He decisively gave up on the idea of speaking nonsense. The risk was too great. If he was not careful, he might lose his life. Cough. About this, the peach blossom spring master has already crossed the sea and reached the other shore. She has long stopped caring about worldly affairs and went into seclusion in the peach blossom spring to ascend to the heavens. As a sage, she should have grasped the spatial laws. Qin Yu frowned. He did not dare to believe such an uncertain answer. Zhou Lei said, I can answer Brother Qin's question. The peach blossom spring master's cultivation is extremely high. She has already reached the peak of true sage and has already comprehended the spatial laws. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. Really? Zhou Lei nodded. Absolutely. That's good. Since the peach blossom spring master had grasped the spatial laws, the chances of anyone plotting against him would be much smaller. Crossing the sea, the other shore, this was probably the cultivation stage that involved the divine path. According to the information they had, the peach blossom spring master was clearly very strong. In other words, as long as he entered the peach blossom spring, the number of people who dared to plot against him would be reduced to a minimum. But there was no lack of madmen in the world. As long as there were enough benefits, they would do anything. After understanding the preciousness of the spatial laws, Qin Yu was not naive enough to think that he could sit back and relax. If he wanted to live a peaceful life, he would have to be more careful in the future and not give others a chance to plot against him. He was thinking too far ahead. Qin Yu gathered his thoughts. You've probably guessed it, so I won't hide anything. Is there a problem with me entering the peach blossom spring? Zhou Lei said, no problem at all. If Brother Qin is willing to join the peach blossom spring, I can recommend you. Pausing for a while, he continued, this is also a secret. You should keep it to yourselves. It's better not to spread it out. I, the Thunder Territory's master, and the Peach Blossom Springs master have been good friends for many years. This time, my trip to the Endless Sea is related to the Peach Blossom Spring. There are some things that didn't need to be explained too clearly. As long as it was pointed out slightly, everyone would be able to react. The Thunder Dominion had never interfered in the affairs of the outside world, and its cultivators rarely ventured outside. After confirming Zhou Lei's identity, everyone was muttering to themselves, unable to guess why the Thunder Dominion would suddenly intervene. After all, although a spiritual body was precious, there were many treasures that had appeared in the world over the countless years, and there were many that were more precious than a spiritual body. There were even some that caused saints to fight, but the Thunder Dominion had never shown any interest in them. Now, there seemed to be an answer. The Thunder Dominion's master was on good terms with the Peach Blossom Springs master, so it was likely that Zhou Lei had come here because of the Peach Blossom Spring. As for why the Peach Blossom Spring master didn't personally take action, he naturally had his reasons. This wasn't something that a group of junior cultivators had the qualifications to guess. In fact, just like Zhou Lei had reminded them before, it was best not to say too much about this matter. When it came to a peak true saint who had already reached the other shore, any seemingly insignificant matter could cause a great stir. Although they were all disciples of saints, there were different kinds of saints. Some were crossing the sea. Although they were saints, they were only half-saints. Some had already reached the other shore and had condensed their great Tao to become a true saint. There were also some who had already walked very far on the road of a true saint and had even reached the peak. Without a doubt, the Peach Blossom Spring Master was the most powerful existence amongst the saints. Chinyu smiled. Then I'll have to trouble Brother Zhou. It's nothing. Zhou Lei nodded. After we leave this place, I will immediately send out a message. The Peach Blossom Spring has cultivators in the Endless Sea. They should be able to catch up soon. At this point, it was time to leave. Although he was eager to become a member of the Peach Blossom Spring as soon as possible, the current state of these 4 cultivators was far too poor. If they left like this and died in the Endless Sea, there would definitely be trouble. Chinyu said, all of you heal your wounds first. Once you've recovered, we will leave. The 4 cultivators relaxed. They knew that from this moment on, they were truly safe. As for why Chinyu was so confident in allowing them to heal their wounds, the reason was simple. It was because Chinyu still held the fire source of this furnace in his hands. If they dared to harm him, then let alone whether or not they were his match, even if they could suppress him together, once the fire source exploded, everyone would be finished. No one would do such a stupid thing. Since he was in an invincible position, Chinyu certainly appeared calm. Unfortunately, some people didn't understand what was going on and had all sorts of random thoughts. They could only be killed. For instance, if they died here, it was destined that no one would know how they died. Chinyu ignored the 4 of them and walked over to Master Yun's side. Her aura had completely vanished, leaving behind only her body. A complex look appeared in her eyes. Although, strictly speaking, she was one with the spirit body source of the Endless Sea, she had still been implicated. If Master Yin hadn't come to the Endless Sea and hadn't encountered Chinyu, perhaps she wouldn't have ended up like this. For better or worse, they were acquaintances, and the reason Chinyu was able to smoothly suppress the spirit body was because he had used Master Yin. He couldn't just watch her die here. Thinking for a moment, he bent down and picked her up. But at this time, Chinyu's eyebrows jumped up, a trace of surprise in his eyes. He called out to the old turtle, who was holding onto the spirit body's soul and swallowing it in great gulps. Chinyu had him take some pure soul strength. Although it hurt him a bit, the old turtle knew that everything he had now was given to him by Chinyu, so he obediently did as he was told. After sending this soul strength between Master Yun's eyebrows, Chinyu let out a deep breath. This was all he could do. As for the result, it would all depend on her fate. Following that, Chinyu began to study how to leave this furnace. He was the same as the several other cultivators. When the Endless Sea shattered, he was pulled here by the spirit body. As for how to leave, Chinyu didn't panic. This was because he held the furnace's fire source in his hand. Intuition told him that this lump of iron wasn't as simple as a fire source. If he wanted to leave with it in his hand, it wouldn't be difficult at all. Reality proved that Chinyu's guess was correct. With a loud ringing sound, crimson lines began to appear on the surface of the furnace. A deep and rich halo of light was released from it, illuminating everyone's faces and causing them to awaken from their cultivation. Chinyu grasped the lump of iron in his hand. Crimson light flowed out from it, covering his entire body as if he were wearing a suit of armor. Dignified and cold. In truth, this was a bit beyond Chinyu's expectations. He had only been trying to use the lump of iron to communicate with the furnace, but he never imagined things would turn out like this. Feeling the shocked gazes behind him, Chinyu turned his hand and put away the lump of iron. The crimson armor on his body vanished along with it, and the furnace returned to silence. There's no need to worry. Continue recovering. Without further explanation, no matter how much the 4 cultivators were scratching their heads, they didn't dare to ask any more questions. But none of them were blind. In addition to the movements they sensed, how could they not understand that Chinyu had picked up a treasure? That's right, he had picked it up. If it weren't for the spirit body pulling them here, they wouldn't have known that there was such a furnace here. Now it was Chinyu's. If one said they weren't jealous, that would be a lie. Just the aura that flashed just now, although it hadn't truly erupted, was still undoubtedly terrifying. How could he be so lucky? Could this be the difference between the main character and the supporting character that often appeared in the script? with a supporting character? At this moment, even the most calm and composed of the Skirich sword cultivators couldn't help but reveal a complicated look in their eyes. To be able to become a disciple of a sage and enter the land of chaos today to fight for the possession of the spirit body, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they were all elites. It had always been others who looked at them in amazement and envy. When had they ever felt inferior to others? But now, facing Qinyu, they had no choice but to admit that there was a huge gap between them. It wasn't just luck. Previously, Qinyu had sensed that something was amiss and barged into the dark void to hide. If it were them, would they be able to do that? Not too long ago, when Master Yin suddenly made a move, Qinyu closed his eyes and opened them again, suppressing the spirit body's backlash. Was the situation really as simple as they thought? A spirit body at the realm within the realm was able to set up such a grand scheme and even deceive a sage. Even if it was in a weakened state, it definitely wasn't easy to deal with. Even without the existence of the laws of space, these 2 points alone were enough to prove Qinyu's strength. That was why when they discovered that Qinyu had no background, they took the initiative to try and pull him into their respective sages' ranks. But Qinyu is Qinyu. Even if he had to choose a thigh, he would choose the thickest and strongest one. The master of the Peach Blossom Spring had existed for a long time and was publicly recognized as a powerful existence second only to the ruler realm. But they had to admit that Qinyu's current display of strength did indeed qualify him to be chosen by the Peach Blossom Spring. This was true strength. They couldn't help but be impressed. Amidst their emotions, the 4 cultivators finished adjusting their breathing. It was impossible for them to completely recover. When Master Yin had grabbed their necks and sucked on them, he hadn't just sucked their blood, but at the very least, they had somewhat recovered. If they were careful, there shouldn't be any problems. Qinyu hugged Master Yin with one hand and didn't waste any more time. He reached out and grasped forward. In the next moment, everyone felt the space around them distort. Their vision fell into darkness, followed by a burst of light. The sound of roaring waves entered their ears, and they felt the salty sea breeze blowing against their faces. The 4 cultivators had never thought that the air in the land of chaos could taste so wonderful. They had survived. Thinking back to their experiences, if not for their good luck and Qinyu's help, they would have been buried in the darkness forever. Their rationality told them that Qinyu wasn't a good person. He had only saved their lives because he didn't want to cause trouble, not to mention that he had forced them to kill Soul Hook in order to drag them into the water. But now, they still felt gratitude from the bottom of their hearts. This was probably because no matter what, the reason they were still alive was because of Qinyu. Xianji hesitated for a moment. Just as he was about to say something, Qinyu's complexion suddenly changed. He pushed Teacher Cloud towards Xianji and said, "The spirit body has died, and she is innocent. Take care of her for me. Also, I'll have to trouble Brother Zhou with the matters of the Peach Blossom Spring. I'll be leaving first." Before anyone could react, he turned and left. His speed was astonishing, and he disappeared in the blink of an eye. Xianji looked at Master Yun and subconsciously opened her mouth. What happened to him? Why does it feel like? She didn't finish her sentence. Honest Zhou lay finished, like he's being chased by a pack of vicious dogs. He had a helpless expression. "You ran so fast. Even if I contacted the cultivators of the Peach Blossom Spring, I wouldn't be able to find you." The sword cultivator suddenly looked down at the roaring waves below. He was only a breath slower. Ruanjing's expression also changed. Rumble. The roar of the angry sea suddenly grew stronger. The 4 cultivators shot into the sky at the same time, far away from the sea. They looked down at the roaring black shadows in the depths of the waves, and their mouths twitched. Although they couldn't see the shadows clearly because of the seawater, the violent and cold aura they emitted clearly belonged to the sea demons of the land of chaos. Although this place was incomparably dangerous to begin with, and it was normal to encounter sea demons, for so many to appear at once, just how many were there, let alone these 4 cultivators who were currently in a weakened state? Even if they were at their peak, they still wouldn't be willing to face these sea demons. Even if the four of them joined forces. That's right, it was just that terrifying. The good news was that their goal was obvious. They weren't the four people who had fled far away. In fact, they didn't even pause because of their existence. With loud rumbles, the roaring waves swept away. This direction, well, it seemed to be the direction that Chinyu had left in a hurry. The complexions of the four cultivators became strange. They thought that Chinyu had run away so quickly just now. Could it be that these sea demons were rushing toward him? If this was really the case, then Chinyu must have done something outrageous to cause these sea demons to go crazy. But the truth was that what they saw was only a tiny part of the problem. Facing the sea breeze and listening to the roaring waves, Chinyu's complexion paled. He finally discovered that his previous thoughts had been a bit too naive. He had looked down on the endless sea too much. Mastering, no, it was more accurate to say that the curse that the spirit body had placed on him before his death had finally begun to appear. Perhaps it was because of the curse, but Chinyu could clearly feel the violent killing intent crazily gathering from all directions, each one filled with bloodthirst and cruelty. Sea demons. There were so many that it was like looking up and seeing a sea of stars in the sky. Although each killing intent wasn't too strong, there were far too many of them, enough to make one's heart tremble. Once he was entangled and surrounded. Even if Chinyu was several times stronger, he would still exhaust all of his strength and be dragged into the sea where he would be torn to pieces. Thus, from the start, Chinyu never thought about risking his life against these sea demons. Run. As long as he left the endless sea, the curse that the spirit body placed on him would be ineffective. Chinyu's thoughts were correct, and this was what he did. But he soon discovered that correct thinking and strong execution weren't omnipotent. This was because he was in the endless sea, and the sea beasts here weren't just rushing from one direction. No matter how fast he was, unless he was fast enough to rush out of the endless sea before the sea beasts surrounded him, it was only a matter of time before he was surrounded. In terms of speed, or to put it more bluntly, in terms of speed of escape, the law of space was the best choice. But the key was, did Chinyu dare to move now? Although the sages had retreated, who knew if they had left any backup plans? If the sages sensed Chinyu's aura, facing the sea demons was terrifying, but at least there was a chance of survival. But if he fell into the hands of a group of sages, even if he had 7 heads and 8 arms, he would only end up dead. Chinyu gritted his teeth and roared in his heart, "Old turtle, do you have any way?" The old turtle smiled bitterly. "Master, there's really no other way. This curse is very powerful. I've already warned you before. Either they kill you, or you kill them all. There's no other way." Chapter 1202. The sea monsters of the endless sea had gone crazy. There were heavy casualties in the endless sea. But compared to the total number of cultivators that entered the land of chaos, this was only a small portion. Now, these surviving cultivators couldn't help but widen their eyes as they looked at the horrifying scene in front of them. Sea monsters, endless sea monsters. There were so many of them that it was impossible to count them all. Their eyes were red, and they screamed as they rushed deeper into the sea. Although the sea monsters of the land of chaos were known for being cruel and brainless, it was rare for them to reveal their current state. Their fierce appearance was like they had run into a great enemy that they couldn't live under the same sky as. Hiding far away, countless cultivators felt their bodies go cold as they watched this scene unfold in front of them. They couldn't help but feel fear in their eyes. The only thing that made them feel at ease was that these crazy sea monsters didn't seem to care about their existence at all. They howled over and howled over, wave after wave. It was like all the sea monsters of the endless sea were gathering in one place. The cultivators didn't know what was happening. They were definitely curious. This was an insuppressible instinct of human nature. But no matter how curious they were, no one wanted to go over and take a look. Even if they thought about it, they would immediately tear this thought to pieces. Couldn't they just live well? Why did they have to create such a difficult obstacle for themselves to survive? The reason why a saint was a saint wasn't just because they were strong. Besides a few special circumstances, they were also intelligent. This was because it was impossible for an idiot to gradually grow stronger step by step, eliminating countless enemies and opponents to achieve their own great Tao. Thus, Qin Yu's guess was correct. Although the saints had already left to chase after the spatial fluctuations and search for the remains of the spirit body, they didn't completely give up on monitoring Dark Bright World. However, they did not completely give up on monitoring the Dark Bright World. After all, this matter involved a spatial law. Now, the saints' cautiousness had been rewarded. Although most cultivators in the Endless Sea didn't know why the sea monsters had gone crazy, there were always a few exceptions. The exception cultivators didn't dare to delay after discovering the sea monsters had gone berserk. They immediately spread the news. The saints' vision was far greater than that of ordinary cultivators. The moment they received the news, they understood everything. There was only one possibility for the sea monsters to go berserk. The spirit body that was born from the Endless Sea and could be considered a sea spirit had sent out a curse before she died. In other words, things were different from what they thought. The spirit body was killed by someone, and the person who killed her was still alive, hiding in the Endless Sea. Previously, when the sage's consciousness descended and searched the Endless Sea, he found nothing in the end. This was not very likely, but what if it was the great accomplishment law of space? The small space it had temporarily created might be able to avoid it. That's right, the moment they saw the news, the sages linked this matter to the spatial laws from before. Because other than this mysterious cultivator who could control the power of space, no one else in the Endless Sea could do this. Shwa, shwa. The sages turned around and headed straight for Mystic Bright World. The woman wore a pink dress with a few peach blossoms tied around her ears. Her expression was calm as she walked on the sea. Wherever she passed, the waves were restrained. At that moment, the woman raised her head and looked at the sky above Xianming World. Her eyes flickered, and she seemed to be deep in thought. In the next moment, light surged in her palm, and a peach blossom appeared. This was a peach blossom similar to the one beside her ear. If one looked carefully, they would discover that its surface was stained with tiny droplets of dew. But this was only on the surface. As her eyes fell on this peach blossom, a suppressive pressure descended upon her mind, like a towering mountain suppressing the world. It was dignified and powerful, vast and boundless. An aura was released from the peach blossom, containing the rhythm of the great Tao. Ordinary cultivators wouldn't be able to sense it, but in the eyes of the Saint Tao, it was a great Tao that connected to the heavens and earth. This was a transcendent great Tao that crossed the sea and reached the other shore. It represented the will of a peak true saint. This will was so strong that even an unparalleled ruler had to give it a certain amount of respect. If a ruler was like this, then there was no need to mention other cultivators. Then, after a brief silence, the space in front of the woman began to fluctuate. 7 figures appeared one after another. The space around them twisted, constantly collapsing outwards as countless tiny cracks appeared. The woman bowed, her voice respectful. Peach Girl greets the saints. The 7 saints that had descended upon Xianming World with their wills were all here. Of course, they didn't appear because of Peach Girl's noble status. As long as one didn't enter the Saint Tao, they were just ants in the world. In the end, they couldn't withstand the passage of time and were ultimately destroyed in body and soul. But this peach blossom in front of them had a true saint's will injected into it. They had to appear to show their respect. Peach Girl, why have you summoned us here? A female half-saint slowly asked. Although the space around her was constantly twisting and cracking, one could still barely make out her slender figure. Peach Girl said, I took the liberty to invite the saints here because the cultivator that caused the sea demons to surround and kill him in Xianming World is the person chosen by my father. I hope that the saints can be magnanimous. There was a moment of silence. The will of the peach blossom spring was indeed incomparably powerful. But a complete space law also represented a powerful temptation. This was especially true for those half-saints that were stuck at the sea-crossing realm and couldn't reach the other shore. This was likely the key to becoming a true saint. A half-saint said in a low voice, "A true saint's disciple is so noble." What ability does this junior have to be favored by the Yardmaster? To become a true saint's disciple, one must have a great destiny. It's strange to accept him so hastily, the other saint said calmly. But no matter which tone it was, it represented a kind of resistance. The peach blossom spring was strong, but it couldn't be unbridled. The space law was in front, and it involved one's own cultivation path. Although the saints weren't willing, they wouldn't hesitate to compete with the peach blossom spring. Peach Girl stood up, her expression unchanging. The saints are right. So whether he can enter the peach blossom spring depends on his own fate. She lifted her hand and pointed forward. The place where her finger pointed was where the crazy sea demons were gathered. With his own strength, if he can survive the endless sea, then he will be fated with the peach blossom spring. Otherwise, it is his fate to die here. This is the peach blossom spring's test for him. The saints were clear about the current situation. With the horror of the sea demons in the endless sea, almost everyone below the saint level would die. The probability of him passing was very small, so it was reasonable to use this as a test. If he could survive, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he had a great destiny. Of course, he would be qualified to become a saint's disciple. The Yardmaster was indeed the Yardmaster. She did things so flawlessly. Although the saints were dissatisfied, they couldn't say anything. "He can't use the space law," a half-saint said. The saints nodded. If he used the space law to escape, the terrifying demonic beasts in the endless sea wouldn't be able to hurt him. Then the test would be meaningless. Peach Girl said, "All right, I'll ask the saints to bear witness today. If he uses the space law, he will fail the test, and the peach blossom spring won't interfere in this matter." The saints were silent, but they couldn't help but sigh inwardly. Peach Girl really had a good plan. Today was a witness, but it was also a promise. If this person really passed the test, he couldn't pretend to know and attack him anymore. Otherwise, it would be a provocation to the peach blossom spring. Provoking a peak true saint was something even a half-saint couldn't bear. However, the saints couldn't refuse this proposal, because it was their only chance to obtain the space law. Although Chinyu knew it was impossible for him to escape the encirclement of the endless sea's sea monsters, he still fled. Killing all the sea monsters. All right, it did sound like one's blood was boiling, and one couldn't help but feel excited. But the chances of successfully accomplishing this were nearly negligible. In other words, escaping from the endless sea and having the curse fail was Chinyu's best and only choice. Then, he had to escape. He had to take advantage of the fact that he wasn't entangled by the sea monsters to reach the edge of the endless sea as much as possible. The closer he was to the edge, the greater his chances of escaping. Logically speaking, the deeper one went into the endless sea, the stronger the sea monsters would be. Chin, you should have chosen to retreat in the direction he came from. But when the middle boundary was destroyed, the spirit body had pulled everyone into the great furnace, and the darkness they fell into was the turbulent flow of space. After a period of delay, Chinyu had nearly reached the deepest part of the endless sea. Thus, there was no difference between going forward or retreating. All he had to do was find a direction and run. He did his best to erupt with his fastest speed, but there was far too little time left for him. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks, and without any hesitation, he threw a heavy punch. Roar! The void roared, and the abyssal titan Phantom appeared behind Chinyu. Together with Chinyu's fist, it came crashing down. The seawater shattered. The fierce sea monster rushed out from the sea. Its tentacles were covered with sharp bone spikes, but before it could wrap around Chinyu, it was sent flying away. A dull sound exploded on the surface of the sea, like a sudden clap of thunder. One could clearly see that the chest of this huge siren had suddenly caved in, and the opposite side bulged up high. Then, with a bang, it exploded into pieces. Flesh and blood splashed out, and a mournful howl came to an abrupt end. This sea monster that had rushed out to kill Qin Yu fell directly into the sea. Blood gushed out, and in the blink of an eye, there was no more sound. Qin Yu's complexion darkened, without any joy at all. He retracted his fist, and the Titan phantom dissipated. His feet fell, howling away without pause. It had to be known that what he was facing right now was the crazy encirclement of all the sea monsters in the entire endless sea. Killing one was nothing to be happy about. If he struck out with his full strength and instantly killed this sea monster, then perhaps there would be unnecessary consumption of strength. But what was more precious right now was time. With every breath of time, he would be able to rush a bit further and get closer to the sea. If there was one, there would be two. Moreover, as time passed, the number of sea monsters that surrounded him would only increase. Soon, Qin Yu encountered the attack of a second sea monster, then a third, a fourth at the start. He could continue to run after killing a sea monster, but after the 10th one, Qin Yu discovered that he had fallen into a frenzied horde of sea monsters. Running was impossible because there were far too many sea monsters. Every time he killed one, another would come. They were like moths flying into a flame. No, that wasn't the right description. To be more accurate, they were like a swarm of locusts, a plague of locusts that blotted out the skies. Pairs of crimson eyes, without any sense of reason, nor did they know what fear was. Even though their bodies were soaked in blood, they still desperately rushed forwards. Even if their bodies were torn to pieces, they still wanted to bite off a piece of Qin Yu's flesh. Fine, he had to admit that even though Qin Yu's heart was strong and firm, he still couldn't help but feel a trace of panic and fear. This wasn't anything to be ashamed of. If it were anyone else, they would find it impossible to remain calm in this situation. As the saying went, if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him, he wouldn't be able to change his expression. Either he had facial paralysis or he was pretending. But this panic and fear only lasted for a short period of time before they were forcefully suppressed in his heart. This was because Qin Yu knew that these emotions would only cause him to die faster. If he couldn't continue running, then he would kill, roar. The ancient giants from the Abyss world whose bloodline had already been severed had descended upon the vast Yang world after countless years. The abyssal titans that fed on the demon dragon race erupted with a shocking strength in this desperate situation. Sea monsters were torn to pieces and blood rained down from the heavens and earth, dyeing the entire sea red. Incomparably tyrannical. If one didn't see it with their own eyes, they would never be able to truly experience the brutality of the battlefield. But no matter how strong the abyssal titans were, they weren't killing machines that didn't know fatigue. Qin Yu's breathing became increasingly heavy and his complexion paled. His strength was about to be exhausted, but as far as he could see, the sea monsters were still endless. There was simply no end to them. Although the saints hadn't interfered, since they had descended into the endless sea, they could sense everything that was happening in this world. They naturally saw that Qin Yu was in a sorry state, and that his strength was about to be exhausted. A flicker of emotion flashed in their eyes. To tell the truth, the fact that Qin Yu was able to last until now had already exceeded their expectations. They didn't know where the giant phantom that appeared behind him came from, but it actually made them feel a faint threat. It could be seen that besides the space rules, this junior definitely had other trump cards in his hands. What a pity. If not for the fact that the space rules were too precious, this person would be a fine piece of unpolished jade. If he was carefully trained, his future would be limitless. Of course, it was meaningless to say all this now. This junior was probably going to use the space rules to escape. Once he made a move, the test would be considered a failure. At that time, the Peach Blossom Spring would withdraw and they would be able to make their move. The Yardmaster had always kept her word and never went back on what she said. The Saints didn't doubt this. As their thoughts raced, they had already begun to consider what method they could use to take Qin Yu away. After all, there was only one space rules, but there were 7 Saints who had descended. There was bound to be a fight. A fight between Saints was naturally a serious matter and rarely erupted unless it was absolutely necessary. However, since it involved the space rules, no one would withdraw. All of a sudden, the eyes of the seven saints burst out at the same time. This was because Qin Yu's aura had suddenly disappeared. He had used the power of space. Swish! All eyes fell on Peach Maiden at the same time. She frowned slightly, but soon relaxed. She said, since he didn't pass the test, he isn't a member of the Peach Blossom Spring. Let the saints deal with him. She turned to leave, but at this moment, she suddenly exclaimed softly and turned to look in Qin Yu's direction. Her eyes rippled with a strange light. Chapter 1203. Qin Yu's aura suddenly disappeared, but he didn't use the rules of space to escape from the sea demon's attack. Peach Girl turned around and said, Saints, it seems that we need to wait a little longer. He hasn't failed yet. The seven saints were expressionless. Regardless of what they were thinking, it was only a basic practice for those who could step into the divine path to not show their emotions. Of course, it was inevitable that they would be annoyed. A big furnace appeared among the sea demons, protecting Qin Yu inside. The amazing thing was that its surface was in a translucent state. Although he didn't reveal the slightest bit of his aura, the crazed sea monsters with red eyes could clearly see his figure. Provocation. From anyone's point of view, this was a blatant provocation. I'm in here. Kill me if you can. Even a normal person couldn't stand this, let alone a group of sea demons who were not smart enough and had been stimulated by the curse. Boom! They attacked the big furnace with all their might, not caring that their heads were bleeding or even being torn apart. The seven saints saw everything. A hint of surprise flashed in their hearts, but they immediately calmed down. In the eyes of the saints, the defensive power of this big furnace was quite astonishing. However, the principle of ants biting an elephant to death was not only applicable to living creatures, but also to this big furnace. What was facing now was the endless attacks of sea demons who were not afraid of death. Perhaps the individual attacks were not enough to cause damage to the big furnace, but there were too many of them. Even if a dead object had some power, how long could it last? It was just struggling at death's door. Maybe it could let Qin Yu survive temporarily, but it was only a matter of time before the sea demons broke through it. When that time came, Qin Yu would still have two choices. He could either wait for death, or he could use the power of space to escape. But in fact, the final outcome of these two choices was very likely to be the same. In other words, as long as the big furnace was destroyed, Qin Yu would die. The saints were waiting for the big furnace to be destroyed. However, the defensive power of this thing was clearly stronger than they had imagined. After suffering countless attacks from the sea demons, it was still the same as before. It seemed that all the crazy actions of the sea demons who were bleeding and even smashed themselves to death had been in vain. Peach Girl's expression was calm, and there was a halo flowing in the depths of her eyes. She was only now beginning to believe that the person her father was talking about was him. Even though many years had passed, she still had an impression of this person's appearance. It wasn't that Qin Yu had left too deep of an impression on her when they first met in the past. In fact, the two of them hadn't even spoken a single word. But she didn't know why, but when she looked at Qin Yu, she always felt he was a bit familiar. In these past years, she had even dreamed of him. In particular, in these past years, Peach Girl discovered that in her dreams, Qin Yu's figure appeared more and more often. What did his father mean when he said that his aura was entangled with his? She asked, but her father just smiled and waved his hand. This time, if Qin Yu could really survive and become a cultivator of the Peach Garden, she had to figure out just who this person was. Just as Peach Maiden was wondering who Qin Yu was and the seven sages were frowning, Qin Yu let out a long sigh. It really worked. When he summoned the Great Furnace, he didn't have the slightest confidence that he would succeed. But after such a long time had passed, he could clearly sense through the lump of iron that the Great Furnace hadn't suffered any substantial damage. In other words, the crazy attacks of the sea demons were just suicidal and had no practical effect at all. He had picked up a treasure. Although he knew that the Great Furnace was an extraordinary treasure, it wasn't until now that Qin Yu discovered that he had underestimated it. Disregarding the terrifying fluctuations of strength contained within the Great Furnace, Just the incomparably formidable defensive capabilities that it displayed left Qin Yu pleasantly surprised. Disregarding everything else, with the current situation, with the protection of the Great Furnace, Qin Yu's situation became much clearer. So what if it was the sea spirit's curse? The sea monsters of the endless sea were relatively limited in strength. Even the most fierce of them wouldn't be able to kill Qin Yu in a short period of time. As long as he couldn't kill him, Qin Yu could hide back into the Great Furnace and wait for his condition to recover before leaving. He could repeat this process over and over again. The more he thought about it, the brighter his eyes became. Qin Yu suddenly felt that killing off all the sea monsters of the endless sea wasn't an impossible task. The old turtle suddenly said, "Master, if you can kill off all the sea monsters here and forcefully break the curse, there might be an unexpected harvest." Qin Yu's eyes flashed. What? Curse immunity. Of course, there are limits to this immunity, but it is still very useful. The old turtle said, "Once this immunity is formed, every sea monster you kill will become a part of the immunity itself. If anyone tries to place a curse on you, they will suffer a backlash. In other words, the more you kill, the better the immunity effect will be. Of course, the premise of all of this is that you must forcefully break the curse and kill them all, or kill them until they collapse and flee." Qin Yu's heart stirred. Only after personally experiencing it did he understand that things like curses weren't to be provoked. And more importantly, he did have the possibility of forcefully breaking the curse. At most, it would only be a waste of time. Even so, Qin Yu still had some scruples. The entire endless sea's sea monsters had gone crazy, and the disturbance was far too great. It was inevitable that they would draw attention. Leaving here as quickly as possible was the best choice. If he became immune to the curse of greed and the saints turned back, he wouldn't be able to cry even if he wanted to. He took a deep breath and suppressed the helplessness and unwillingness in his heart. How could everything in this world be perfect? He had to be decisive when he made a choice. Whatever. Breaking the curse takes too much time. I should leave the endless sea first. The old turtle paused for several breaths of time. He suddenly said, "Master, are you worried that the saints will return?" "In truth, there is no need." Qin Yu's eyes brightened. Why? If he could, he certainly hoped to obtain the strength to be immune to curses. The old turtle let out a deep breath. He quietly said, "Because they returned a long time ago." Qin Yu, if the old turtle were standing in front of him, Qin Yu would have grabbed him by the neck and then fiercely covered his mouth. Bastard, did he not know how to spell the words crow's mouth? Or did he think that after eating the spirit body, his wings had hardened and he no longer needed to look up to him? This was simply insolence. Haha, your courage has grown big. You dare to joke with me about something like this. But this isn't funny at all. Eat it back. The old turtle was silent. Qin Yu's sneer froze. Then it slowly faded away. His body tensed up and anger appeared in his eyes. "Old turtle," he roared in his heart. "Master, it's true." The old turtle said with difficulty. "Not long after you came out, the saints came to the dark light world." Qin Yu believed that the old turtle, who was at the peak of the death-fearing world, would definitely not dare to continue to tease him after sensing his anger. In other words, what he said was true. Those incomparably terrifying saints with heaven-defying cultivation had returned. Perhaps now, they were quietly watching him kill in a corner. It was as if they were watching a monkey show. His body tensed up. Qin Yu forced himself to calm down. His thoughts raced. It didn't make sense. If the saints came, would they see him alive and kicking? After knowing the meaning of the laws of space, Qin Yu was very clear that those saints who had yet to grasp space would look at him like they were looking at a piece of greasy and fragrant red braised meat. If they could swallow in one bite, they would definitely not split it into two. "You must know something. Don't keep me in suspense. Otherwise, before I am unlucky, I will first smash you to pieces." The old turtle coughed and hurriedly said, "Master, don't be anxious. Actually, I don't sense it clearly either. It's just a few immature speculations." Qin Yu gritted his teeth and squeezed out a word. "Speak." If he dared to say another word of nonsense, just wait and see. The old turtle was obviously very understanding. Master, there are 7 auras of the saints. But above these 7, there is an even stronger one. I should say that after the stronger one descended, the other 7 saints then came to the dark light world. Then, they remained silent and did not do anything. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. What do you mean? The old turtle said, Master, this is what I think. After the saints discovered you, there is no reason for them to continue to remain silent. Since they are silent, it means that there's an even stronger will that force them to temporarily stop. That stronger aura? Yes. How much stronger? A lot. Qin Yu raised his hand and rubbed between his eyebrows. His thoughts began to turn. The 7 saints returned because of the changes in the boundless sea. He did not think that the saints would have the time to watch him fight with the sea demons. Obviously, it was because of the space laws on him. They had a purpose but did not do anything. The speculation of the old turtle was the only possibility. There was a stronger existence that stopped them. Why did they stop them? If it was simply to take away the space laws, according to the old turtle, who was much stronger, they could have done it directly. 8 saints, 1 strong and 7 weak, were silent at the same time. This situation was strange. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. Did they take a fancy to him? He asked the old turtle and got an affirmative answer. Both of them thought so. Although there was no evidence, at least it proved that it was one of the more likely possibilities. If so, why did they take a fancy to him but did not intervene? There was a high chance that he wanted to test Qin Yu some more. For example, the curse from the spirit body in front of them. That was why the old turtle came out and mentioned the topic of curse immunity, leading Qin Yu to think about killing all the sea demons and obtaining this attribute. Qin Yu did not know if their guess was right or not, but at least one thing was certain. The idea of rushing out of the boundless sea was definitely not possible. It was very simple. It was still a stable situation. What if he ran out and destroyed the stability? Not to mention the fact that there were 8 sages with 1 strong and 7 weak. Even the weakest one among them could completely destroy Qin Yu. If he could not run, then he could only choose to stay and kill all the sea demons and forcibly break the curse on him. This would take time. During this time, Qin Yu could use the old turtle to sense the state of the 8 saints. If he felt something was wrong, then he would quickly change his strategy. If it was always so stable, then he would kill the sea beast first. In fact, Qin Yu had always been cautious when making this decision. It was best not to act rashly in an unknown situation. Moreover, the more time passed, the more prepared he could be, although it was very clear that his preparation was probably useless against the saints. However, this was Qin Yu. No matter what kind of situation he was faced with, he would not resign himself to death. If the sages still attacked him in the end, no matter how terrified and desperate he would still fight to the death and do his best to tear off a piece of flesh from them. From this point of view, Qin Yu's current state was a little similar to the sea demons in the boundless sea. Of course, this was not appropriate, because what Qin Yu was going to do next was to kill all the crazy sea demons in the boundless sea. What if he was with the old turtle, and this was a test? The better his performance, the more likely he was to be saved. The only worry in Qin Yu's heart was that his method of slaughtering the sea demons was strictly speaking cheating. He did not rely on his own strength at all. The old turtle reassured him. He said that treasures were part of a cultivator's strength. In terms of cheating, Qin Yu could use the power of space to directly open a space channel and leave. So what if there were more sea demons in the boundless sea? That was real cheating. This was the truth. But from the moment he confirmed that there were 8 saints staring at him, Qin Yu knew that he could not use the power of space. Nonsense. This was such a simple reason. Qin Yu could use the power of space to escape easily. What was there to see? The saints were silent in the dark, silently watching his movements. Was he too bored? This meant that it was best not to use the power of space. The old turtle said this to remind Qin Yu. He took a deep breath and said, I've rested enough. Let's continue. With a thought, the furnace disappeared into thin air. Suddenly, He heard the roar of the waves and the violent and mournful cries of countless sea demons. The phantom of the abyss titan appeared, and the killing began again. Peach Girl's eyes revealed a trace of surprise. She did not expect that Yu would choose to continue killing. Could it be that he still wanted to kill all the sea demons in the boundless sea? This was simply crazy. However, based on what she saw today, if the defense of the furnace was strong enough, this crazy idea might be possible. It just needed time. The 7 saints were silent, and their faces were a bit more gloomy than before. They had thought that Yu was temporarily living an ignoble existence, but who knew that he was still alive and kicking? Moreover, based on their observations, it was likely that he would continue to be alive and kicking for a long time to come. The defensive power of the furnace was simply ridiculously strong. After all, even if they were in Yu's shoes, they might not be able to withstand the suicidal attacks of these sea demons, even if they stood far away and did not counterattack. The defensive power of the furnace was naturally not ordinary. Moreover, it was such a strange translucent furnace. Suddenly, a half-saint said, "Could this furnace be?" Although he only said half of the sentence, the expressions of the saints changed slightly. Clearly, they had thought of something. Chapter 1204. 7 saints had appeared in the bright, profound world at once, and there was even the will of the peak true saint master of the peach garden that had descended. But this did not mean that there were many saints in the vast young world. On the contrary, even though the universe was vast and boundless, and there were billions of cultivators that were born, those that could cross the sea and step into the saint realm were few and far between. After all, in the cultivation of the great Tao, the higher one reached the peak, the more difficult it was. Crossing the sea and gathering the great Tao. It was easy to say, but since ancient times, it was unknown how many talented cultivators have been trapped here. In the end, they could not withstand the corrosion of time, and in despair, their entire life of cultivation had come to nothing. The vast majority of cultivators might not even see a saint in their entire lives, and they might not even know the name of this existence. The reason why Yu's luck was so good was because his spiritual body had matured, and it was the best time to harvest it. This attracted the saints to fight over it, and that was why there were so many twists and turns. After saying so much, it was to establish a concept. In the vast young world, the half-saints and true saints were only a very small circle. Therefore, the Thunder Dominator who did not communicate with the outside world, and the half-saint stacking Yuan who had a bit of a narcissistic personality were still known by the half-saint disciples. Every new or old half-saint or true saint, as long as they showed signs of activity, they were a member of this small circle. Aside from the Overlord Chief Sovereign, the members of this small circle were the most powerful rulers of the vast young world. Everyone was very familiar with them. A very, very long time ago, within 100,000 years, the newly ascended half-saints were almost unaware of the appearance of a madman in the vast young world who wanted to forge his own great Tao and reach the other shore by his own strength. To be called a madman in the small circle of saints, one had to be insolent to a certain degree. This madman was called the Furnace Saint, and he came from mysterious, refining family. Of course, this was only the news that circulated on the surface. According to some old saints in the dark, the truth was that he was a smelly blacksmith who had gotten lucky all the way and killed his way into the divine Tao. There was a sour and resentful taste in his words. Regardless of what the truth was, the Furnace Saint was one of the most powerful divine Taos 100,000 years ago. He was so strong that he had once fought against 2 true sages with his sea-crossing half-sage cultivation. However, the reason why he was called a madman was not because of this glorious battle record, but because he actually wanted to use the cauldron in his hands to make up for the flaws in his cultivation. He wanted to forge a path to the heavens and reach the other shore to become a true saint. Other than the Furnace Saint, no one knew the specifics. But one thing was certain, and that was that he had walked his own path. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to fight against 2 true saints with his demigod cultivation. But in the end, the furnace saint's Tao faded away. There were rumors that he tried to forge his own Tao, offending the will of the vast sun. As a result, he was not tolerated by the world's source energy and was completely erased. There were also rumors that said that the great Tao he forged was an error to begin with, that his end was already decided the moment he stepped onto it, that he would be annihilated while cultivating. The furnace saint died. Like a resplendent star, it disappeared from the starry sky. But he was never forgotten. This was because there were always some people that try to find the things he left behind after he died. For instance, the great cauldron in his hands. A half-sage was also a saint, but he was trapped in the sea crossing and had to withstand the endless suffering of the sea of bitterness. Although he was no longer corroded by time, it was still difficult for him to be free. The road ahead was endless, and the winds were high, and the waves were turbulent. If he couldn't see the other shore, then in the endless years, he would inevitably think of other things. For instance, what the furnace saint said about forging his own Tao to reach the other shore. Before, it was already said that the furnace saint was able to fight against two true saints with his half-sage cultivation and not be defeated. This already surpassed the limits of the sea-crossing realm. So, he must have done something and changed something. Those that couldn't forget the furnace saint didn't necessarily want to use his method to reach the other shore. But at the very least, they held on to some hope. At the very least, they could use a portion of it to raise their own strength to a higher level. At that time, perhaps there would be other opportunities. There were definitely risks involved in doing this. The furnace saint's Tao vanishing was the best proof of this. But to a half-sage that had lived for countless years and was trapped in the sea-crossing realm, as long as there was a glimmer of hope that they could see the other shore, then any risk was worth it. Thus, everything related to the furnace saint had been circulating in the circles of saints for countless years, especially the ancient circles of half-sages. And it just so happened that most of the half-sages that descended to Dark Bright World today had lived for a long time. Originally, when they saw Qin Yu take out the great cauldron to resist the sea monster's attack, the half-sages didn't think too much about it. Vast Yang was vast and endless. Not even a saint dared to say that they had seen everything in the world and that there were countless furnace-shaped treasures. It was impossible for them to think too much about one. But this time was different. This furnace's defensive capabilities were so strong that even a saint was startled. They had to admit that they were inferior. Just this point alone was enough to prove that this furnace was different. It was possible that it was the one in the furnace saint's hands. The complexions of the saints changed for a moment before they composed themselves. They maintained the same silence as before, but the burning heat in the depths of their eyes rose once more. The law of space was a good thing, but it was destined that there would only be one. It was impossible for everyone to have a share of it. But this great cauldron was different. If it was really as they thought, then it would be a great fortune that everyone could enjoy. The saints could all feel each other's thoughts from the corner of their eyes. Then, all eyes fell on Peach Girl. Of course, she could feel it clearly. She frowned and said respectfully, "Saints, please dispel my doubts. What's wrong with this great cauldron?" The female half-sage who spoke first said, "Peach Girl, this matter involves the saint path. It's useless for you to know." After a moment of silence, she said, "Peach Girl, contact the yardmaster. If she can give up on this person, we are willing to pay a certain price." The other 6 saints hesitated for a moment before they nodded. Given their status as saints, the price they were willing to pay was naturally understandable. Even if they added the word definitely, it was still a huge benefit. Not to mention that there were 7 saints making such a promise. Even the Peach Blossom Origin Master had to be cautious about this price. It was hard to say whether or not the Great Cauldron in Qin Yu's hands was a Saint Cauldron item. If they made such a promise hastily, there was a chance that they would end up with nothing. But even if there was only a 1% chance, they were willing to try. Crossing the sea, half-sage, although they were called saints, they still couldn't see the other side. This kind of suffering and pain was unimaginable to those who hadn't experienced it themselves. This wasn't pretentious. Peach Girl's complexion changed. Although she was the yard master's only daughter and had an incomparably noble status, she still didn't dare to neglect the will of the seven saints. Saints, please wait a moment. Peach Girl stretched out a finger and touched the peach blossom floating in the air. She closed her eyes as if she were sensing something. In the next moment, the peach blossom suddenly bloomed. A dot of light flew out from within and rapidly expanded into the figure of a middle-aged Taoist. Greetings, Yard Master. The seven saints bowed slightly. The middle-aged Taoist's face was blurry, but his expression was calm. Everyone, there is no need to be so polite. Please rise. The female half-sage said, Peach Girl should have already conveyed our thoughts to you. I ask that you be magnanimous and give us a chance. If they could have taken it by force, they would have done so long ago. But facing the master of the peach garden, they had no confidence they could do so. If they couldn't take it, then they could only ask. The seven saints understood this, so their attitudes were naturally respectful. Yard Master, please help us. We will surely give you a price that will satisfy you. The middle-aged Taoist nodded. I understand what you are asking of me, but the great cauldron in Qin Yu's hands is not what you think it is. Moreover, this junior and my peach garden have their own entanglements, so I only intervene today. A true saint condensed the great Tao. Every word and action they spoke resonated with the heavens and earth. If what they said wasn't true, all the saints would be able to sense it. Now that they heard this, they couldn't help but reveal disappointment in the depths of their eyes. It actually wasn't a Saint Cauldron item. The female half-sage said, Apologies for disturbing the yard master. As an apology, I will withdraw and no longer concern myself with the matters of this junior. Farewell. She turned and stepped out, vanishing from sight. Yard master, please don't blame us. The other six saints bowed and vanished. If they disturbed the yard master and obtained an explanation, they would feel indebted to her. But the key reason they took the initiative to retreat was because they no longer saw any possibility of suppressing Qin Yu. With the protection of the Great Cauldron, no matter how many sea demons there were, it was only a matter of time before they were all killed. After the saints left, the middle-aged Taoist looked at Peach Girl, a gentle expression on his face. You wait here. Once he breaks the curse, bring him back to the peach garden. Yes, father. The middle-aged Taoist turned into motes of light and flew back into the peach blossoms. The petals immediately closed, returning to their previous half-open state. Peach Girl turned around and looked towards the depths of the land of chaos, where the sea demons roared and the stench of blood soared into the skies. Her eyes brightened. Just now, her father mentioned that Qin Yu's entanglements with the peach garden's auras. He should be referring to her. Just what did this person have to do with her? The abyssal titan raised its hand, and a destructive might burst forth, sending the swarming sea demons flying away. Blood sprayed into the air, the pungent smell of blood assailing the nostrils. But at this moment, this abyssal creature that had slaughtered wantonly and unusually violent froze slightly. In an instant, it suffered multiple attacks from the sea demons. With a slight tremble, the abyssal titan disappeared. The great cauldron descended once more, and Qin Yu appeared within it. They've really left? The old turtle said hurriedly. Master, you told me to keep an eye on the saint's condition at all times. I've confirmed that the seven saints have left. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. You're saying that the strongest saint's aura is still here? That's right. The old turtle hesitated slightly. What do you think, Master? Qin Yu took a breath and said solemnly, Do nothing. Since the saints haven't shown themselves, we'll pretend that we don't know anything. To Qin Yu, it didn't matter if there were 8 saints or 1 saint. They could kill him however they wanted. So now wasn't the time to relax, but in the end, he still let out a small sigh of relief. If there was only 1 saint left, there was no need to wait at all if he wanted to harm Qin Yu. If the other party continued to remain silent, it meant that his and the old turtle's previous guess was most likely true. Suddenly, a light flashed in the depths of his mind. Qin Yu suddenly thought of a possibility. Jolet once said that there were cultivators of the peach blossom spring in the endless sea. Could this saint be the master of the peach blossom spring? It was very likely. After all, according to what Xinyu knew from the four cultivators of the previous generation, the master of the peach blossom spring had crossed the sea and reached the peak of the true sage on the other shore. It completely matched the old turtle's description of how strong he was. From this perspective, only this peak true divine would be able to intimidate the seven sages into not daring to make a move and retreat at this moment. The master of the peach blossom spring had comprehended the great Tao of space, so the possibility of him being harmed was not high. In addition, he had asked Jolet to convey his wish to join the peach blossom spring. The other party had descended here and set up a test for him. It made sense. Everything made sense. Taking a deep breath, Qin Yu's eyes flashed. Of course, this was the best-case scenario. Even if it wasn't, the other party basically had no ill intentions. Again, if he wanted to make a move, he could have done it long ago. There was no need to wait. He closed his eyes to recover. When Qin Yu opened his eyes, a bright light surged. He stood up and stepped forward, his figure instantly disappearing. In the next moment, accompanied by a roar, the Abyss Titan descended. Without any hesitation, it took the initiative to punch the crazy sea monster. Come, let the slaughter and blood come even more fiercely. Since he was currently in the test, the better his performance was, the more likely he was to be valued by the master of the Peach Blossom Spring. However, even if he successfully entered the Peach Blossom Spring, Qin Yu still did not have a complete plan in mind as to what he should do next. However, it was clear that the more he was valued and the higher his status was, the higher his chances of saving Mingling, and even Yu Qi. After a series of violent attacks, Qin Yu felt that his strength was running out. He decisively summoned the furnace. This thing was really a good treasure. With it in his hands, where couldn't he go in the vast world? In fact, Qin Yu even suspected that even a saint might not be able to easily destroy it. However, why would such a thing appear in the endless sea? Moreover, it had not been discovered for so many years. If he couldn't figure out, then he wouldn't think about it. In any case, the furnace was in his hands, and that was enough. Slaughter, rest, slaughter, rest. During this entire process, Qin Yu didn't pause at all. He was like a tireless killing machine. The number of sea monsters that died under the Abyss Titan's fist could no longer be counted. The most horrifying scene was that where Qin Yu stood, the sea had turned completely red. It wasn't that the seawater was dyed red, but that it had been completely replaced by blood, forming a true sea region composed entirely of blood. Fierce and tyrannical winds howled even more fiercely. One could almost hear howls of unwillingness, anger, and mournful wails in his ears. An aura lingered, causing the sky to darken and the temperature to fall. There were even snowflakes that began to fall. These were snowflakes and also flowers of blood. This was because they were the same as the sea, crimson in color. Every snowflake emitted a faint curse aura. At the start, Qin Yu couldn't help but feel his blood boil because of the slaughter. But as killing became a habit and even an instinct, he began to become numb to it. Kill, 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 until there was nothing in front of him. When the last sea monster was smashed to pieces by a formidable strength, and there was nothing left in the boundless sea, Qin Yu paused for a long time before he reacted. All the sea monsters had been killed. His mind relaxed, and everything in front of him fell into darkness. Luckily, his instincts allowed him to respond. Before his consciousness faded away, he summoned the furnace. Chapter 1205. Crimson blood gathered into a sea. As Qin Yu fell asleep, a strange change occurred. Shrill roars filled the air, and sea monster phantoms appeared from the blood sea. They stubbornly stared at the sleeping Qin Yu in the furnace. Their blood-red eyes were filled with hatred and ruthlessness. They roared again and again, struggling to break free from their shackles and continuing to take his life. But soon, the sea monster phantoms in the blood sea began to panic. Their blood-red eyes stared at Qin Yu with fear. They struggled, desperately trying to escape. But they were wrapped up by an invisible strength and constantly pulled towards the furnace. As the sea monster phantoms approached the furnace, they fused into it. Then, they decomposed into motes of red light that submerged into Qin Yu's body. Space twisted. Peach Girl appeared from within. She wore a long pink dress, and her hair swayed in the wind. As if sensing Peach Girl's aura, the sea monsters in the blood sea began to howl even more fiercely, as if they were begging for her help. Peach Girl swept her eyes over Qin Yu, her expression faint. Since you've been killed, then accept your fate. Roar. The sea monster phantoms in the blood sea roared in anger. Faint traces of blood-red energy rose up, weaving together into crimson chains that shot towards Peach Girl. If you don't save us, then we'll be destroyed together. Peach Girl's expression didn't change. But in the next moment, the chains that approached her seemed to suffer from something incomparably terrifying. With a loud bang, they exploded, and with them, the sea monster phantoms in the blood sea were also destroyed. Like a hurricane sweeping past, the sea monster phantoms shattered. They were no longer able to resist the swallowing strength. They turned into countless motes of red light that howled into the furnace and fused into Qin Yu's body. When all of the shattered motes of light were absorbed, a purple mark suddenly appeared between Qin Yu's eyebrows. It flashed several times before vanishing from sight. Curse mark. Peach Girl's lips parted. Her eyes fell onto Qin Yu's face. She thought that his luck was quite good. By breaking the curse, there was a chance that he could condense a mark and develop a formidable resistance. In the future, when he faced the curse again, he would be able to protect himself. But this was only a possibility, it wasn't absolute. Moreover, even if he successfully condensed a mark, the quality of the mark would be different. Purple. Even with Peach Girl's experience, she couldn't help but sigh at Qin Yu's luck. In the future, if anyone tried to use the power of the curse to deal with Qin Yu, they would have to pray for their luck. After all, the more difficult it was for him to kill the sea monsters of the endless sea, the greater the power of the curse mark. However, with Peach Blossom's background, she had seen far too many precious things. After sighing with emotion, she calmed down. But this didn't mean that she had lost interest in him. On the contrary, her eyes brightened as she looked at the furnace that was protecting him. His father's words were not false, which was why the saints had given up and retreated. But perhaps they did not realize that not what you think did not necessarily mean that this great cauldron had nothing to do with the Cauldron Saint. On the contrary, with Peach Girl's understanding of her father, the origin of the cauldron in front of her was most likely not ordinary. Qin Saint and Blood Yuan had thought, and after his he woke, and use and he. After, he and he. And everything around him was quiet. As long as he was lying in the furnace, there was nothing to worry about. After slaughtering the sea monsters, Qin Yu had absolute confidence in the furnace's defensive abilities. But this time, a calm woman's voice echoed in his ears. If you're awake, then come out. Qin Yu looked up. He could clearly see the woman sitting on the surface of the furnace. The sea breeze blew against her pink dress, and her black hair danced in the wind. She seemed like a fairy. His body froze, and his eyes subconsciously widened. Just as joy gushed out, it froze in the next moment. It wasn't her. This gaze, this tone, this indifference, everything was completely different for what he remembered. No matter what, Qin Yu never imagined that the Peach Blossom Spring cultivator Zhou Lei spoke of would be her. Peach Girl narrowed her eyes. You know me? Qin Yu stood up and cupped his hands together. Many years ago, when Miss chased down Shuizheng, we met once. Peach Girl said, You still remember. Qin Yu took a deep breath. Mrs. Grace is extraordinary. Any cultivator would never forget you after seeing you. Peach Girl deeply looked at him. Since you remember, then you should know that I come from the Peach Blossom Spring. She stood up and walked forwards. If you haven't changed your mind and still want to enter the Peach Blossom Spring, then follow me. The furnace vanished from sight. Qin Yu cupped his hands together and bowed. I asked Miss to lead the way. My name is Peach Girl. Thank you, Miss Peach Girl. You should call me Senior Apprentice Sister. Qin bowed. Yes, Senior Apprentice Sister. One in front and one behind. The two of them flew far away, leaving behind the terrifying danger zone that would later be called the Land of Chaos, the Blood Abyss. Peach Girl stopped. She lifted a hand and took out a peach blossom. An aura was released from it, causing space to shake. The power of space. If his guess wasn't wrong, then the incomparably powerful saint aura that the old turtle felt had come from this peach blossom. She was truly worthy of being a peak true saint that crossed the sea and reached the other shore. Her true self hadn't arrived, but just the appearance of a peach blossom was enough to deter 7 half-saints. Senior Apprentice Sister, wait a moment, Qin suddenly said. Peach Girl glanced at him and took back her finger that was pointing at the peach blossom. With the sound of breaking air, 4 black dots rapidly approached from afar and soon landed in front of the two. Greetings, Senior Apprentice Sister Peach Girl. Xianji, Zhou Lei, Ruan Jing, and Ling Xiao bowed respectfully. Peach Girl nodded lightly. No need to be so polite. The 4 stood up, and their gazes fell on Qin. Zhou Lei was the first to speak with a face full of smiles. Congratulations on fulfilling your wish, Brother Qin. Xianji suddenly said, Zhou Lei, you are wrong. Since fellow Taoist Qin has entered the Peach Garden, he is of the same generation as you and me. From now on, you should call us Senior Apprentice Brothers and Senior Apprentice Sisters. She pursed her lips and looked at Qin. Teacher Yun. I returned her to her elder brother Yin. Wu Hui Beijia stood upright. Hui. She hastily lied to Jia Jun. As she spoke, she pointed in the direction they came from. Qin thought for a moment and looked at Peach Girl. She lightly said, If you want to go, then go. Thank you, Senior Apprentice Sister. Qin nodded at the 4. Not long after they flew out, they saw a small boat on the sea. Yin, Bo Yuan's calf. Pei Zheng, clank clank. He had no idea what had happened after Qin was separated from them. But when he returned Yin Shi to him, he saw that the 4 cultivators were incredibly powerful. Among them, Ling Xiao and Ruan Jing were the disciples of the renowned half-saint realm cultivators. To be able to befriend them and even entrust Yin Shi to them, there was no doubt about his background and strength. Although he had asked for the Xian paper, he didn't know whether or not Qin was willing to help. Cutting salt with baldric-wielding evil mist? After all, this was not the first time Qin had saved Yin Shi's life, so it was only natural that he would turn a blind eye to him. Landing at the bow of the ship, Qin cupped his hands together. Cloud? Di Zao Xian? Earth brand dizziness? Sedan ta cute fat cutilong? Cloud? What? Moo? What about punishment? Stand up and make a stand? TSK. What the F asterisk CK? 12 hibiscus myrtle? Quilt recovery? Sulfur? Strong brim moa? Bone man? Right after Zhang Xian said those words, Putong, Zhou Cheng kneeled to the ground. Fellow Taoist Qin, if you can save Yin Shi, Zhou Cheng is willing to do anything to repay you. Pong. He kowtowed repeatedly. Qin flicked his sleeves and pulled him back. All right, I'll take a look at the situation first. Yin Shi's luck was not too bad. After his soul was extracted from his ethereal body, his soul had already begun to absorb the energy within the ethereal body. As long as there were no problems, he would be able to wake up in a few months. However, his memory would be affected. Cloud? Boo. Travel to Emperor's Palace? Ash. Is it a shelter for neodymium chlorine? Old chooks? Wait and see. Yina fuses the Huang Qin Shui. 2 roundworms stunned, Lei's man, equals long. Qin thought for a moment. Then, he sent a wisp of pure soul force into Master Yun's body once more. To save a person to the end, he had done all he could. He stood up. Yun? D chose 18 pi element dizziness? Being stingy and provoking others? Worried about the woodcutter's remonstrance? Huang Mo and Simia? Chong. Side surgery? Oxum? 0 umbrella? After saying that, he paused for a moment, then continued. Fellow Taoist, Zhou Cheng isn't bad. He's someone who can be trusted. With the sound of breaking air, Chinyu rapidly flew far away. Cloud? You? Xine? On the shore, I am in a state of disbelief. Debunking the lie that Su Yuan poisoned Ji Qiao? 1017 choking noisy fuck she? Resistant steamed bun bright pine grain? Nefin Yinshin. P. As long as Yinshi didn't object to the matter, as her elder brother, he would make the decision to make the two of them become cultivation companions. By the time Seiji returned to Peach's side, the four cultivators who had stayed here earlier had already disappeared. Peach Girl had no intention of explaining and merely glanced at Chinyu. He understood the meaning of this look. Can you leave now? Chinyu nodded in response. With a soft sound, Peach Girl's white finger touched the peach blossom. Ripples spread out from the peach blossoms, causing the surrounding space to tremble. Then, as the space trembled, a wooden door appeared. This wooden door was very strange. It was actually woven from peach branches. Looking at the thick branches and traces of compression, it was likely that this door had existed for many years. But what was even more amazing was that these peach branches were alive. Not only were there fresh peach leaves, but there were also peach blossoms covered in dew. It was like a door had been woven from a tree. Peach Girl pushed open the door and stepped inside. Chinyu glanced at her back and followed without hesitation. The wooden door closed. It gently twisted twice before disappearing from sight. After pushing open the door and walking out, he didn't even feel the slightest fluctuation of strength. But in the time it took to take a single step, he had already crossed an immeasurable distance. He arrived in an ancient study room. Looking up, one could see through the tiny gaps in the walls woven from peach branches and see the sunlight that sprinkled in. Beams of light fell on the ground, forming bright spots of light. Chinyu subconsciously narrowed his eyes. Then, he discovered that his appearance in this room didn't seem too appropriate. Because from the decorations and the things in front of him, anyone who wasn't blind could see that this was clearly a woman's room. A faint fragrance floated in the air. Chinyu wasn't unfamiliar with this smell, because it was exactly the same as Peach Girl's. With a light cough, Chinyu lowered his head lest he see something he shouldn't. Peach Girl glanced at him but didn't say anything. She took several steps forward and pushed open the door. Then, she turned and said, "Welcome to the Peach Garden." Outside the door, peach trees were in full bloom. The pink flowers seemed to stretch all the way to the ends of the world. On the ground, a thick layer of flower petals had already fallen. At this time, they moved with the wind, filling the air with the fragrance of peach trees. Chinyu walked out the door. He subconsciously reached out a hand and caught a peach blossom petal. The moment it touched his palm, the petal quietly melted into it. Then, a cool feeling appeared. Chinyu looked down and saw that the mark of a blooming peach blossom had appeared on the back of his hand. Seeing this, Peach Girl's eyes flashed, but she remained silent. "Junior Apprentice Sister, I have come on the orders of my honorable master to bring Junior Apprentice Brother Chinyu to pay his respects." From the peach forest, a white-robed man walked out. His eyes were like stars, and his eyebrows were like swords. Chinyu cupped his hands together. "I am Chinyu." The white-robed man smiled and nodded. "Junior Apprentice Brother, how do you do? I am White Phoenix. My teacher is Third, so you can call me Third Senior Apprentice Brother. If Junior Apprentice Brother doesn't have any questions, please follow me so that Honorable Master doesn't have to wait for too long." Chinyu said, "Yes, Senior Apprentice Brother." He turned and glanced at Peach Girl, who was looking at the peach forest in front of her. "Thank you, Senior Apprentice Sister, for bringing me into the Peach Garden. Farewell." Third Senior Apprentice, White Phoenix, smiled. He cupped his hands together towards Peach Girl and said, "Junior Apprentice Brother, please follow me." As the peach blossoms danced in the air, the two of them soon vanished from sight. From start to finish, Peach Girl didn't even glance at the two of them. It was like nothing in the world was more beautiful than the peach forest in front of her. White Phoenix was a good person. As this label appeared in Chinyu's heart, he was secretly surprised. In his life, he was destined to be cautious and cautious. He wasn't one to easily trust others. But the two of them had only met for the first time and had only exchanged a few words. Yet, he had already developed such a feeling. He naturally found it incredible. White Phoenix seemed to sense something in Qin Yu's eyes. He smiled and said, "Junior apprentice brother, there is no need to be nervous. Because of my bloodline and my cultivation method, I am naturally close to all living beings. It is normal for you to think that I am a good person." He paused for a moment, giving Qin Yu some time to digest this. Then, his smile became even brighter. "Of course, I am indeed a good person." Qin Yu was left speechless. He thought that this was the first time he had heard someone say that he was a good person. However, this third senior apprentice brother's smile was quite infectious. It made one unconsciously feel relaxed. Vigilance. He had to be vigilant. "Junior apprentice brother, relax. The disciples of my peach garden have always been close to one another. There are no messy matters like those outside. You will understand in the future." White Phoenix looked at the peach blossom mark on the back of Qin Yu's hand. "So, junior apprentice brother has already obtained the mark. Is it outside junior apprentice sister's peach house?" Qin Yu nodded. White Phoenix sighed, envy in her eyes. "Junior apprentice brother is truly lucky. There are many peach trees in my peach garden, but in terms of quality and age, junior apprentice sister's peach house and peach trees are second to none. Even honorable master's place of residence is a bit worse. For junior apprentice brother to obtain a peach blossom mark in a peach house, it seems that you are fated with my peach garden. Your future prospects are limitless." There was such a thing? If it weren't for the fact that White Phoenix spoke so seriously and that this matter could be easily verified, Qin Yu really would have suspected that this third senior apprentice brother was speaking nonsense. "The peach blossom mark is the proof of identity of a cultivator of my peach garden. In the future, when you meet others, you can display it to prove your origins." Third senior apprentice brother stopped. His eyes flashed several times, and he said, "I heard that junior apprentice brother has already perceived the space laws. If there is a chance in the future, I would like to discuss it with junior apprentice brother." Without waiting for Qin Yu to respond, he bowed and said, "Honorable master, junior apprentice brother Qin Yu has arrived." A small courtyard hidden in the peach garden appeared in front of the two of them. But, from start to finish, Qin Yu had never discovered its existence. In fact, if it weren't for White Phoenix stopping here and bowing, Qin Yu still wouldn't have noticed this small courtyard. It was like if one didn't have permission, even if this small courtyard was in front of them, it would still be nothing but air. Unless one personally experienced it, it was difficult to understand the mysteries and wonders of this matter. It was impossible to understand the impact and shock contained within. Chapter 1206. The air was quiet, but Bai Feng had clearly received a response. After bowing respectfully, he nodded to Qin Yu and turned to leave. A gust of wind swept up the flower petals on the ground, and his figure vanished. As Qin Yu was hesitating, feeling a bit nervous and speechless, the courtyard door in front of him creaked open. He took a deep breath, tidied up his robes, and stepped into the courtyard. Then he saw a middle-aged Taoist standing under a peach tree with his hands behind his back. His back was ordinary, and he wasn't too tall, but with just a glance, Qin Yu felt as if he were facing a towering and endless mountain. Then, in the next moment, Qin Yu discovered that he really had appeared in front of a towering mountain that seemed to connect the heavens and earth. It was an unsurpassable mountain. A terrifying pressure was released from it, shrouding him within. In the small courtyard, the middle-aged Taoist under the peach tree didn't move. Qin Yu's expression was one of struggle, and his forehead was covered with beads of sweat. With a stuffy cough, his body trembled, and his face paled. His pupils violently shrank, revealing a look of shock. He hurriedly bowed and said, "Junior Qin Yu greets the garden master." The Taoist responded and turned around. His eyes fell on Qin Yu. "You woke up so quickly. Not bad. From today onwards, you are a disciple of the peach garden, ranked 9th. A tremor descended upon Qin Yu's mind. As the peach blossom origin master spoke, he instantly felt a connection with the peach garden beneath his feet. The great Tao of a true saint had been formed, and his words were true laws. From this moment onwards, Qin Yu is truly recognized as a cultivator of the peach garden. It turned out that this first glance was a test. Qin Yu knelt down and bowed. Disciple greets honorable master. The garden master nodded casually. Rise. My peach garden doesn't have many rules. Today's situation is special, and I have received your greetings. There is no need to do so in the future. Qin Yu respectfully said, Yes, honorable master. The garden master said, You can slowly learn the other rules of the peach garden in the future. Today, I will tell you the first rule. The peach garden doesn't raise idlers. Don't think that just because you are my disciple, you could do nothing and enjoy all kinds of cultivation resources. It is best not to look forward to meat pies falling from the sky. What you can obtain depends on how much you contribute to the peach garden. There are many ways to earn contribution points. Today, there is one in front of you. Can you hand over the spirit body bread in the endless sea? He didn't ask whether or not it was in his hands, nor did he foreshadow anything. He just went straight to the point. Qin Yu's body stiffened. He had never expected that the first thing the yard mistress would ask about was spiritual bodies. It seemed that they valued it a lot. Indeed, Zhou had entered the endless sea because of the will of the peach garden. But the problem was that the spirit body had already been eaten by the old turtle. Even if Qin Yu wanted to hand it over, he couldn't. Master, that spiritual body, the yard master said calmly. Every new disciple can receive a gift from me. It can be considered as a greeting gift or a gift for becoming a disciple. However, the value of the gift is different. Do you understand what I mean? The sweat on Qin Yu's forehead increased. Was this the peach blossom spring master who had crossed the sea and reached the other shore? His style of doing things was a little too much. Wasn't this telling him that if he wanted something good, he should exchange it with the spiritual body? Otherwise, he shouldn't even think about it. But now his heart calmed down. The yard master's behavior didn't seem to be forcing him. Was it that nice? After hesitating for a moment, Qin Yu said, I dare not hide it from master. The spiritual body has been used, so He wanted to say something, but stopped. He didn't dare to say anything definite. If the yard master was angry, he could only make the old turtle vomit blood. Giving up a part of his soul power was better than being hammered by a true sage. No, there was no need to be hammered. Just a finger would be enough to put Qin Yu in a life and death situation. The yard master frowned. Used? She glanced at Qin Yu. If that's the case, take your things and find a place to stay. The scene in front of him changed. Qin Yu didn't even know what had happened before he was thrown out of the courtyard. Looking at the tightly shut courtyard door, he was secretly shocked at the horror of the true sage realm. On the other hand, he felt even more strange. This yard master was completely different from what he had imagined. Did he pass the test by refusing to give up the spiritual body? Moreover, he hadn't mentioned anything about the law of space from beginning to end. It had to be known that those half-sages had rushed back and forth for the law of space. It was clear how precious it was. How come it wasn't valued at all in the peach blossom garden? Qin Yu looked down at the two dry things in his hand, a jade pendant and a set of robes. The corners of his mouth twitched. Was this the greeting gift that a dignified, true sage gave to his disciple? It was too unrealistic to be so shabby. However, he didn't dare to reveal this thought. Not only could he not reveal it, but he also had to show his attitude. Qin Yu respectfully bowed. Thank you for your generous gift, master. Disciple thanks you. The courtyard was quiet. There was no response. It seemed that the yard master had sent Qin Yu away by throwing him out just now. Qin Yu bitterly smiled inwardly. He looked around and suddenly found that he didn't know where he should go. Suddenly, someone patted his shoulder. Qin Yu turned around, but there was no one in front of him. Haha, are you junior brother Qin Yu? Do you want to make a bet? As long as you can find me, I will help you solve your problem. If you can't find me, give me the jade pendant in your hand. The voice came from all directions and was difficult to lock onto. It seemed that every peach blossom was trembling and speaking together. Qin Yu narrowed his eyes and cupped his hands together. May I ask which senior brother you are? Only a disciple of the peach blossom garden would dare to cause trouble in front of a true sage. Hee, junior brother is very cunning. Do you want to use this method to lock onto my position? Do you agree to the bet? If you agree, I will tell you. Qin Yu's eyes flashed. I agree. Ha ha ha. Thank you for your support, junior brother. I am a sixth in front of master, so you can call me sixth senior brother. Then let's start looking. The sixth senior brother's concealment method was truly superb. Qin Yu had already sensed with rapt attention, but he still couldn't find anything. However, since he dared to make this bet, he certainly had a way. Closing his eyes as if he were sensing something, Qin Yu suddenly stepped forward and walked to the side. Sixth senior apprentice brother, please come out. There was a sudden burst of laughter. Old Six, I never thought you would have a day like this. Junior brother is fierce. You should teach him a lesson. These words were said in high spirits, as if they were filled with the joy of avenging a great hatred. With the laughter, a large man walked out with his head held high. He really was a large man. Besides the variation humans, this was the first time Qin Yu had seen such a tall and strong cultivator. With every step he took, although there was no sound, Qin Yu could feel the earth shaking. This was a feeling that could only be sensed, not described. Blazing and surging blood energy fluctuations surged like billowing tides, making one feel as if they were facing a wave of heat. He was like a moving volcano in the shape of a person. The large man's smile was incomparably brilliant. He reached out a hand towards Qin Yu. Junior brother is fierce. I am your fifth senior apprentice brother. You can call me Iron Mountain. With a muffled sound, Qin Yu's entire body seemed to shrink, and both his legs sank into the ground. Iron Mountain's smile stiffened. He quickly grabbed Qin Yu and lifted him up from the ground, an awkward expression on his face. Junior apprentice brother, are you all right? I was too excited and didn't control my strength properly. I'm really sorry. Qin Yu bitterly smiled. Half of his body was still in a sore and numb state, and this was only an inadvertent pat from him. The disciples of the Peach Blossom Garden were truly terrifying, and this fifth senior apprentice brother's strength was terrifyingly strong. He was simply a vicious beast in human form. Qin Yu moved his body and cupped his hands together. I'm fine. I can still withstand it. Fifth senior apprentice brother, there's no need to worry. Iron Mountain laughed. Good. Junior brother's mortal body has been cultivated quite well. This is the correct path. We men need to have a body of steel and iron in order to live in this world with our heads held high. Junior apprentice brother, don't you think so? Qin Yu squeezed out a smile. He thought that there weren't many men in this world that could compare with fifth senior apprentice brother in terms of strength. Moreover, you mustn't be too excited, otherwise if you hit me again, I really might vomit blood. Sixth brother, honorable master is right here. Don't be so shameless. Perhaps to express his apology, Iron Mountain stepped on the ground and spoke up for Qin Yu. Bah, fifth senior apprentice brother, don't speak nonsense. I've always been someone who accepts a bet, and I've never done something so tasteless as reneging on a debt. With a flustered and exasperated scream, he drilled out from where Qin Yu had been. What was amazing was that throughout this entire process, the ground didn't crack at all, as if he were a part of the earth to begin with. Standing beside Iron Mountain, these two senior apprentice brothers formed a sharp contrast. One was strong, and the other was thin and shriveled, as if he were a sick ghost. But his eyes were incomparably bright. They swiveled around. It was clear his thoughts were running wild. If it weren't for Iron Mountain speaking up, he really might have refused to acknowledge his debt. Ha! Junior apprentice brother, how are you? I was just joking with you just now. Junior apprentice brother, please don't mind me. Sixth senior apprentice brother brightly smiled. My name is Earthway, and I am Honorable Master's sixth brother. You will know in the future that your sixth senior apprentice brother is a man of his word, a true man of his word. He absolutely isn't someone who can be compared with a simple and honest person. Iron Mountain wasn't angry. He chuckled. That's right, junior apprentice brother. Remember that sixth brother is someone who cares about face the most. Since you won the bet, he will definitely give you a greeting gift. After all, arranging for you to stay in the Peach Garden was the mission that elder senior apprentice brother gave us. Your sixth senior apprentice brother is such an honest person, so how could he fool you with something like this? Sixth brother, am I right? Sixth brother Earthway had a wonderful expression on his face. He looked as if he wanted to tear apart Qin Yu's mouth, but he still forced himself to remain indifferent. Cough, cough, of course. I, sixth brother, have always been very generous to my junior apprentice brothers and sisters. Iron Mountain clapped his hands. Good, sixth brother, good job. Junior apprentice brother's jade pendant is something that honorable master bestowed upon him. In any case, you should at least take out something of equal value. Hee hee, let me tell you, honorable master is in the courtyard. If you want to take out something, you better think carefully. Otherwise, you will be mocking honorable master, and that is a great sin of disrespect. Earthway nearly choked on his own saliva. He glared fiercely at Iron Mountain and reached out to grab Qin Yu's arm. Let's go, junior apprentice brother. Let's talk as we walk. We shouldn't delay honorable master's cultivation here. He pulled Qin Yu away, his expression as if he were being chased by a dog. This description wasn't too appropriate. Qin Yu carefully glanced at the courtyard. Luckily, there was no movement inside. It seemed that even a saint couldn't truly perceive everything. Sixth brother, let me tell you, the place that honorable master has arranged for you is quite good. Earthway had an affectionate expression as he tightly held onto Qin Yu. His footsteps were extremely fast, not giving Iron Mountain a chance to interrupt. Qin Yu didn't care about the bet. He just felt that the disciples of the Peach Garden were the same as the Yardmaster. They were very different from what he imagined. To be able to enter the Yardmaster's tutelage and become a true saint's disciple, it was necessary for them to have a tyrannical cultivation. He had seen Iron Mountain's strength. This skinny and sickly sixth senior apprentice brother had grabbed onto Qin Yu's arm as if it was cast from iron. Qin Yu knew that Iron Mountain wasn't someone to be trifled with. However, the behavior of these two people didn't match the usual image of a high-level cultivator. Let alone being cold and aloof, it was also quite appropriate to describe them with the word amusing. Iron Mountain coughed lightly. Earthway glared at him fiercely and spoke even faster. Junior apprentice brother, if there is anything you don't understand, just ask me. There aren't many rules in our peach garden. You just need to remember a few dead rules. We're here. Your residence is in front of us. Let me tell you, the scenery is really beautiful. It will definitely satisfy you. Big brother Qin. Cheers of surprise rang out. Qin Yu, who had been pulled by Earthway, paused and smiled. He had thought that he would be able to see her after entering the peach garden, but he didn't expect that she would be waiting here. Before she arrived, a fragrant wind blew over him. Earthway's face stiffened. He quickly let go of Qin Yu and retreated, his eyes subconsciously sweeping around. Iron Mountain roared, "Junior apprentice brother, be careful." But he was a bit too late. The figure in front of him had already thrown herself into Qin Yu's arms. This caused the complexions of fifth and sixth senior apprentice brother to change. They thought that their eldest senior apprentice brother had instructed them to take care of their junior apprentice brother's daily needs. If something went wrong, the two of them wouldn't be able to escape the blame. It seemed that they could only brace themselves and act as a meat shield today. Before Iron Mountain and Earthway could do anything, a giant shadow covered Qin Yu's figure. He raised his head and saw a huge head coming towards him from above. It was covered in scales, and the horn on its head flashed with a metallic luster. Its giant eyes were filled with the indifference of a creature at the top of the food chain. It stared at Qin Yu, who was protecting the person in his arms. It snorted, and with a low roar, its eyes became increasingly unfriendly. Dragon. It was more accurate to say that this was an incomparably formidable great dragon with an astonishing body and an aura that left one's heart racing. Qin Yu narrowed his eyes. He looked into the great dragon's eyes and patted the person in his arms. Is this the young dragon from the past? It's actually so big. That's it. Lei Xiaoyu looked up, excitement and joy on her face. She turned and glared at the great beast. Little Black, you cannot be rude to Big Brother Qin. The great dragon snorted, an aggrieved look in its eyes. Didn't we agree not to call me that in front of outsiders? Chapter 1207. His name was Little Black. In truth, he was already a very big dragon. In front of others, he had always been cold and aloof. But now, he nearly cried tears of sadness. Little fish, you've changed. You used to be so good to me, but now that you see that surnamed Sheen fellow, you immediately throw me to the back of your mind. There's no need to say anything else. A broken heart is like a shard of glass. Mine is also broken. Seeing that the great dragon was still unhappy, Lei Xiaoyu gave Qinyu an apologetic look. She let go and hugged his head, stroking it with both hands. All right, my azure dragon is the most sensible one. Don't be angry anymore, okay? Moreover, there are no outsiders here today. 5th senior apprentice brother and 6th senior apprentice brother definitely won't speak of this to anyone. Isn't that right? Shua, the azure dragon allowed Lei Xiaoyu to hug its head. Then, its giant eyes turned and glared at Iron Mountain and Earth Elemental, full of menace. To put it simply, if the two of you are tired of living, then go out and tell others. Let's see if my white teeth are sharp enough. Of course. Junior apprentice sister is right. 5th senior apprentice brother, and I definitely won't tell anyone. So you don't need to worry. Earth Elemental squeezed out a smile. He looked at the azure dragon with a flattering expression. He had no choice but to flatter it. The young dragon that junior apprentice sister had brought with her in the past had such a great background. Although its current strength wasn't much to them, its future growth potential was terrifying. If they attacked now, any one of them could teach this proud dragon a lesson. But what would they do afterwards? They definitely couldn't kill it. Otherwise, let alone their junior apprentice sister, even a master of the azure dragon that had already tacitly agreed to become the future guardian beast of the Peach Garden would jump out and exterminate them. Since they couldn't kill it, no one was willing to provoke the azure dragon. Otherwise, with its narrow-mindedness, they would surely suffer a miserable fate in the future. Moreover, because of its bloodline, the azure dragon was greatly favored by 3rd senior apprentice brother. Within the Peach Garden, it was a hegemon that no one dared to provoke. Iron Mountain's honest face revealed a puzzled look. He frowned and said, "What did you say?" "Because I've been cultivating these past days, my ears aren't too sharp, so I didn't hear anything." This was breathtaking. Looking at 6 senior apprentice brothers' open mouth and the speechlessness in his eyes, Qinyu finally realized that there was some truth to what he said before. Some people seemed to be simple and honest, but in fact, they were rotten to the core. The azure dragon snorted. Of course, its snort was its snort, and when it snorted, it carefully avoided Lei Xiaoyu's ears. It squinted its eyes at them, full of disdain. It thought to itself, "I'm a peach orchard, and yet these people actually managed to sneak in. It's a disgrace to the family name." However, it didn't expect that before it followed Lei Xiaoyu here, senior brother 5th and senior brother 6th had already stayed in the Peach Blossom Garden for many years. They really didn't have the qualifications to express such sentiments. However, it did not matter whether he was qualified or not. What was important was that the Tsang dragon had a backer, confidence, and potential. That was enough. Taishan and Tu Xing's faces stiffened as they roared in their hearts. We are being looked down upon. Was he being looked down upon by this azure dragon? In any case, we can be considered as senior brothers. Don't you have any respect for your seniors? The atmosphere in the peach orchard was extremely corrupt. No, he had to find eldest senior brother and get him to ruthlessly kill the evil spirits in the garden. Glancing at each other, the 2 senior brothers nodded indiscernibly at the same time. They had already reached an agreement. They would go and complain together. As for why it was indiscernible, cough cough, it had to be indiscernible. That azure dragon's eyes were sharp, and he was narrow-minded. If it saw them, it would cause more problems, and they might even be beaten up by it. They had to bring 3rd senior brother here first. Taishan and Tu Xing's faces turned pale as they thought of senior brother Baifeng's serious, virtuous, and long-winded experience. Should they reconsider the matter of complaining? If eldest senior brother was not up to standard, they would be in big trouble. The corner of the azure dragon's mouth curled up. That's right, it curled up slightly, revealing an extremely human-like sneer. If it could speak, it would definitely use an indifferent tone and lightly spit out 2 words, trash. With just this bit of courage, you still want to complain about this dragon's evil deeds? Coward. However, since Old 5 and Old 6 were so cowardly, the possibility of them telling others his nickname was very low. That's right, they wouldn't dare. The Azure Dragon let out a sigh of relief. Just as it was feeling proud of itself, it suddenly felt a hand caressing its head. Its eyes widened and flames of anger surged out. It thought that even if you are Chinyu, even if you saved my life before, your actions are far too insolent. Only a small fish can touch my head. Today is the first time we meet. If I don't teach you a lesson, you will turn the world upside down in the future. It bared its teeth and turned its head, its eyes widening. It was about to use its ultimate dragon roar to teach Chinyu a lesson. The Azure Dragon's scales opened up and its mouth cracked open, revealing snow-white teeth. But no matter how hard it tried, the roar that reached its throat couldn't come out. Its giant dragon eyes stared at Chinyu. It didn't want to admit it, but it had to. At this moment, it was actually afraid. That's right. The Azure Dragon that was praised by the Yard Mistress endlessly and whose future growth was limitless, and whose bloodline was the noblest in the present dragon race, couldn't help but feel endless fear as Chinyu caressed it. It was like it had encountered a life or death nemesis. No, that wasn't the right description. To be more accurate, it had encountered an existence that absolutely restrained it in terms of life level. Abyssal titans fed on abyssal demon dragons and were peak vicious creatures of the abyss. Although the 2 worlds were polar opposites, they were essentially inextricably linked. Although the Azure Dragon was a peak existence of the dragon race in the vast Yang world, since it also had a dragon bloodline, it could naturally sense the abyssal titan aura on Chinyu's body. Of course, if this was all, then an incomplete abyssal titan aura might not be able to scare the Azure Dragon. The key point was that Chinyu's body hid the shadow of the abyss origin will that had betrayed him. The existence of the old turtle filled in the flaws of the abyssal titan's aura and even raised it to a point where even the Azure Dragon feared it. Lei Xiaoyu looked at the Azure Dragon that wanted to roar but couldn't. Then, she looked at Chinyu who was caressing it. Her eyes sparkled like stars. Big Brother Chin was too fierce. Even someone as proud as Little Black didn't dare to be presumptuous with him. My Big Brother Chin is the most handsome. Senior apprentice brothers Iron Mountain and Earth Element couldn't help but widen their eyes. As they looked at this strange scene, there was only one thought in their minds. Why? Junior apprentice Brother Chin, you was a bit more handsome, but with the Azure Dragon's sense of beauty towards humans, there shouldn't be any difference. In terms of cultivation, the 2 of them had grown up together for so many years, so they should have some self-confidence in themselves. But the more they thought this, the more depressed they felt. To treat them differently to such a degree was simply too excessive. After touching it a few times, Chinyu tapped a finger on the Azure Dragon's head, causing it to emit a metallic sound. Not bad. Your scales are quite thick, so your defensive power should be quite good. It seems you've eaten well these past years. Not only did he touch it, but he also tapped it. Iron Mountain and Earth Element licked their lips and coughed. They stepped forwards, thinking that even if they didn't tap it, they could at least touch it a bit, right? But before they could reach out, there was an angry roar. The Azure Dragon took this chance to turn its head, its eyes ruthlessly glaring at them. Bastard, did you really think that just anyone could touch my head? You actually dared to have such thoughts? You deserve to die 1,000 deaths. But in today's situation, he really wasn't in the mood to deal with Old 5 and Old 6. He should leave first to avoid any awkwardness. The dragon head quickly retracted. With a strong gust of wind, the massive shadow howled far away. All right, the proud Azure Dragon had been injured by Chinyu today. It immediately decided to look for 3rd senior apprentice brother to uphold justice for it. Humph, humph, touching is touching, but you actually dare to hit my head? Today, I'll let you know what it means to cause trouble with your own hands. Iron Mountain and Earth Element angrily drew back their hands. Earth Element looked in the direction that the azure dragon left in, and his eyes turned. Junior Apprentice Brother, I have some news for you for free. How about we forget about our previous bet? The azure dragon went to find third Senior Apprentice Brother to complain. It is deeply favored by third Senior Apprentice Brother, so you must be careful. Iron Mountain quickly spoke. He didn't forget to glance at Earth Element. Old 5, what did you say just now? My ears aren't too good, so I didn't hear you clearly. Earth Element. If this fellow could defeat Old 5, he would have absolutely fallen out with him. Today, this fellow had steeled his heart to oppose him. Losing things wasn't a big deal. When it came to making a bet, there were always winners and losers. As someone who walked this path, he was well aware of this. But the key point was that Shinyu had just arrived today. If he lost the bet the first time they met, it would be a bit shameful. With the temperament of the people in the garden, they would definitely laugh at him. They would say that Old 6 was bragging about himself. But on the first day, his prestige was destroyed by their junior apprentice brother. Things weren't the key, but face was. Lei Xiaoyu blinked her eyes. Big Brother Qin made a bet with 6 Senior Apprentice Brother. Did he win or lose? Iron Mountain's ears immediately sharpened. He won. It was a clean win. Lei Xiaoyu cheered. My Big Brother Qin is fierce. She stuck out her tongue and looked at Earth Element in embarrassment. 5th Senior Apprentice Brother, I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. But I heard that Senior Apprentice Brother is the most trustworthy person. You will definitely keep your word, right? Earth Element's face stiffened. His expression was uglier than crying. Yes, Junior Apprentice Sister is right. I will definitely compensate you. Standing outside the door, Qin Yu watched as 5th and 6th Senior Apprentice Brothers left. Although this was his first day in the Peach Garden, he still felt very relaxed. This place and the people here were very different from what he had imagined. Very interesting. Seeing Qin Yu in a daze, Lei Xiaoyu thought he was worried. She smiled and said, Big Brother Qin, there is no need to worry. The Senior Apprentice Brothers and Sisters in the garden are all very, very good people. 6th Senior Apprentice Brother won't be dissatisfied just because he lost a treasure. She secretly smiled. But I must remind Big Brother Qin that 6th Senior Apprentice Brother is someone who cares about face and likes to make bets. Since he lost to you today, he will definitely try to find a way to regain his face in the future. You must be careful. Qin Yu glanced at her and saw her secretly smiling appearance. He suddenly felt a warmth in his heart. When this girl knew that she was about to die, she had forced herself to remain strong in despair. But now, she was smiling so brightly, like a blooming flower. He suddenly felt that some of the seemingly stupid things he did were in fact correct and worth it. For instance, this Lei Xiaoyu in front of him, as well as Master Yin who he met in the dark bright world. He hoped that after she woke up, she would also have a bright and beautiful life. Although Qin Yu didn't say anything, Lei Xiaoyu could feel the warmth in his eyes. Her expression became increasingly intimate. Big Brother Qin, let me bring you around to familiarize yourself with your residence. Let me tell you, after I heard you were coming, I personally cleaned this place. She held on to Qin Yu's arm and pushed open the courtyard doors. There were peach trees everywhere in the peach garden, and this place was no exception. A thick peach tree was planted deep in the courtyard. At this time, its branches gently swayed. Through the peach blossom mark on his arm, Qin Yu could feel a faint trace of joy. It actually had a consciousness of its own, and it was welcoming its master's arrival. Lei Xiaoyu reached out and patted the peach tree. Every disciple of the peach garden has a peach tree like this. It is a guardian that honorable master bestowed upon us. As she spoke to hear, she carefully looked around. She lowered her voice and said, Big Brother Qin, you should have seen Honorable Master already. Do you think that a dignified, true saint is different from what you think? The truth is that Honorable Master is a bit stingy, but he is a very good person. He treats us disciples very, very well. You will understand in the future. For instance, this peach tree. The cultivators outside the peach garden can only dream of obtaining it no matter how much they rack their brains. Qin Yu nodded. He looked at Lei Xiaoyu and said, Honorable Master's thought has retreated. Ah, Lei Xiaoyu's eyes widened. She had an expression that said, "How would you know?" Then, she said with pleasant surprise, "Big brother Qin, you can sense Honorable Master's thought?" Qin Yu said, "I can only sense a little bit. It's not too clear." "Ah, that's great. I finally have a place to talk without worry." Lei Xiaoyu cheered. Then, she quickly shut her mouth. "Big brother Qin, are you joking with me? Really, this matter is too serious. I don't dare to speak carelessly." A strange expression crossed Qin Yu's face. He rubbed his chin. Could it be that Honorable Master likes to eavesdrop on others? Lei Xiaoyu's eyes widened. She covered his mouth. "Big brother Qin, are you crazy? You dare to speak so loudly?" Last time, second senior apprentice brother accidentally said something. He didn't say it clearly and was directly thrown into the turbulent space flows by teacher. When he came back, he was miserable. Thrown into the turbulent space flows, Qin Yu's lips couldn't help but twitch. As someone who had grasped the space laws, he certainly knew how terrifying the turbulent space flows were. Once one was sucked in, there was a high chance they would be pulled into some unknown land or even fall into a chaotic region of space. It would be difficult for them to escape. To actually use such a method to punish a disciple, it seemed that the garden master wasn't too narrow-minded. He had to remember this. In the future, he had to be extremely cautious in his words and actions. He absolutely could not violate the garden master's taboos. Otherwise, who knew what punishment he would suffer? Qin took a deep breath and then slowly exhaled. He coughed and said, "Xiaoyu, I just arrived at the peach garden and don't know how deep it is. Explain it to me so that I don't stir up any trouble." Chapter 1208. Lei Xiaoyu looked left and right. She didn't see any signs of her master making a move. Only then did she let out a long sigh. It seemed like the old man's consciousness had indeed retreated. Lei Xiaoyu asked Qin Yu again and confirmed that he could truly sense the fluctuations of the yardmaster's thoughts. She was overjoyed. "Let me make this clear, big brother Qin. In the future, when I want to talk, I will come to you. You can't find me annoying." Qin Yu was left speechless. It seemed that the yardmaster's bad habit of eavesdropping was very serious. This wouldn't do. He had to solemnly remind the old tortoise to closely probe the mental fluctuations of the yardmaster to prevent any accidents from occurring. As Qin Yu thought of this, he subconsciously glanced at the peach tree in front of him. After all, his honorable master was the master of this peach garden. He had no choice but to be careful. Lei Xiaoyu sensed his gaze and said, "You don't have to worry about this, big brother Qin. The peach tree is our Tao protector and is of one heart with us. He won't speak carelessly." She pulled out a wooden chair and sat down. She picked up the teapot and poured 2 cups. Immediately, the fragrance of tea filled the air. "These are the tea leaves that my honorable master gave me last time. I don't know what variety it is, but master hesitated at the time. I've tasted it several times, and the taste is excellent. Big brother Qin, try it." Qin Yu picked it up and took a sip. As the tea fell into his stomach, faint traces of warmth began to nourish his soul. Even with the intensity of Qin Yu's soul force, he could feel a faint increase. From this, one could see just how amazing the effects of this tea were. "Good tea." He put down the teacup and knocked on the table. No matter how good the tea was, it was still effective. Moreover, he would have plenty of time to slowly savor it in the future. Lei Xiaoyu said, "All right, then I won't beat around the bush and get straight to the point. Actually, as I told Big Brother Qin before, the senior brothers and sisters in the Peach Blossom Garden are all really good people. It's not difficult to get along with them, and there's no backstabbing and scheming like there is outside. As long as you don't get on teacher's bad side, there's basically no problem." Qin Yu nodded, indicating for her to continue. Lei Xiaoyu thought for a moment. "Teacher must have told you that the Peach Blossom Garden doesn't feed idlers, right? This isn't targeted at you, big brother Qin. All the disciples who enter the Peach Garden will be informed of this. I have to remind you that this is what Master said and what he did. Everything in the Peach Garden has to be fought for by yourself. Of course, there are many ways to earn contribution points. There is a booklet in the room with detailed records. Big Brother Chin, you must have memorized them, because the contribution points of our peach blossom garden are really, really useful. She subconsciously shrank back, her eyes turning as she looked at Chinyu. She waited for him to give her an affirmative reply and confirm that her honorable master's will wasn't present. Only then did she continue to say, "Let me tell you something true. I came late, so I didn't personally experience it. It was my senior apprentice brother and senior apprentice sister who told me. Our second senior brother of the peach garden. I'll tell you about this person later. In short, many years ago, second senior brother was bullied outside. He came back and cultivated bitterly for 30 years. When he came out of seclusion, he wanted to take revenge. In the end, the Cho family somehow knew who he was. They were so scared that they hid in their turtle shells and refused to come out. Second senior brother blocked their door and cursed them for 3 days and 3 nights. The Cho family refused to come out no matter what. Guess what happened in the end? Lei Xiaoyu's face was filled with excitement and fascination. Our second senior brother actually used the contribution points he had accumulated to ask our honorable master to help him. With a single punch, he shattered the turtle shell. Second senior brother picked up his spear and killed his way in. I heard that the person who bullied him in the past was beaten miserably, and that it would be difficult for him to take care of himself for the rest of his life. Most importantly, our honorable master was watching, and the elders on the other side were scared to death. They didn't dare to interfere. Chin Yu's lips twitched. He thought that the dignified, true saint of the Permethau River had actually been asked by his own disciple to become a hired thug. Even Lei Xiaoyu knew about such a ridiculous matter. It was clear that this wasn't a secret in the peach garden at all. In other words, the yard master didn't feel ashamed at all and didn't take this matter seriously. In fact, she even tacitly allowed the disciples to know the importance of contribution points. Nonsense. If even a true saint could be asked to become a hired thug, then what was the value of contribution points? The most direct example was right before his eyes. Chinyu immediately decided that after Lei Xiaoyu left, he would immediately enter the room and find the booklet that recorded how to earn contribution points. He would memorize it word by word. The more of these things, the better. In fact, Chinyu couldn't help but think that if he could really accumulate an astonishing number of contribution points, would he be able to ask the yard master to negotiate with Peach Girl and let Ning Ling and Yuchi go? Putting aside the possibility of this, there was at least such a possibility. As long as it was possible, Chinyu was willing to give a try. I can't provoke honorable master, and I have to accumulate contribution points. Once I know these 2 rules, I can basically live a normal life in the peach garden. Lei Xiaoyu hesitated for a moment. Let me tell you more about my senior brothers and sisters. Although I know they're good people, I haven't interacted much with them, so I won't comment much. I'll just give you a brief introduction. Chinyu was the last to enter the sect. The yard master had personally acknowledged him as the 9th rank of the disciples. In other words, including himself, there were a total of 9 disciples. Peach Girl, the 3rd rank White Phoenix, the 5th rank Iron Mountain, the 6th rank Earth, and Lei Xiaoyu in front of him. He had already seen most of them. The ones he hadn't seen were eldest senior apprentice brother, 2nd senior apprentice brother, and 7th senior apprentice sister. Lei Xiaoyu had focused on these 3. She rambled on for a long time, and the information was fragmented. But as she continued to speak, 3 figures gradually appeared in Chinyu's mind. Eldest senior apprentice brother, who loved to speak reason when necessary. He couldn't suffer grievances and would take revenge on the spot. If he couldn't take revenge, he would go into seclusion and cultivate. When he came out, he would immediately seek revenge. 7th senior apprentice sister was a very beautiful woman. But Lei Xiaoyu said that even to this day, she didn't know what 7th senior apprentice sister looked like. This was because every time Chinyu saw her, 7th senior apprentice sister would have a completely unfamiliar but equally beautiful face. The reason White Phoenix was called White Phoenix was because she came from the Phoenix clan. In terms of pure bloodline, she was one of the most noble beings in the world. She was innately close to all living beings. In simpler terms, She was the type of person that had explosively good relationships with others and was blessed with heaven-defying luck. Wherever she went, good things would happen. The person she admired the most was eldest senior apprentice brother. Thus, she was deeply influenced by him and liked to reason with others. When eldest senior apprentice brother was in seclusion and second senior apprentice brother was always away from home, most of the daily affairs of the Peach Garden were handed over to White Phoenix to manage. There was also another point. Because the Phoenix clan and the Azure Dragon bloodline had been close friends since ancient times, and now that the bloodlines of the two clans had withered away, White Phoenix treated the Azure Dragon extremely well. She simply doted on him and taught his junior apprentice brothers and sister the lesson. She had even fought with second senior apprentice brother once. Thus, although the Azure Dragon wasn't the Garden Master's disciple, his status wasn't low at all. As Lei Xiaoyu spoke to hear, she comforted Qinyu. She would plead with the Azure Dragon so that it wouldn't incite third senior apprentice brother to cause trouble for them. Fifth senior apprentice brother Iron Mountain was a cultivator of the ancient bloodline's mortal body path. His cultivation revolved around his blood vitality, and his strength was unimaginable. Sixth senior apprentice brother Iron Mountain was said to be a spirit born from the earth and reincarnated into a human. He was born as one with the earth, and his escape techniques were the most amazing. In addition, he was the closest to fifth senior apprentice brother, so it was likely that he had learned some body transformation techniques. The strength of his mortal body was also astonishing. Then there was Lei Xiaoyu, who was ranked 8th. When she mentioned herself, this little girl was a bit shy. This was because according to the rules of the Peach Garden, Qinyu had to call her senior apprentice sister if he saw her in the future. After all, she was ranked 8th and Qinyu was ranked 9th. She didn't feel too embarrassed to say too much, so she quickly glossed over it. Finally, there was Peach Maiden. When she was mentioned, Lei Xiaoyu was clearly a bit hesitant. Senior apprentice Sister Peach Maiden is ranked 4th and is Honorable Master's only daughter. She has the most honorable status, but she has always been a loner. Even in the Peach Garden, she doesn't get too close to the other disciples. After I entered the Peach Garden, I've only seen 4th senior apprentice sister a few times, and we haven't spoken more than 10 words. Besides eldest senior apprentice brother and second senior apprentice brother, only senior apprentice brother White Phoenix is able to say a few words to 4th senior apprentice sister. Everyone else is a bit afraid of 4th senior apprentice sister because when she doesn't want to speak, her eyes are far too cold. Lei Xiaoyu bitterly smiled as she finished speaking. It was clear that she had recalled some memories that weren't so beautiful. Then, she spoke of some miscellaneous matters of the Peach Garden, such as the problems with entering and exiting the Peach Garden, some forbidden areas, and even the servants of the Peach Garden. Of course, there were servants, and there were many of them. The dignified Peach Garden Holy Lands couldn't possibly only have a true saint and 9 disciples, right? Although one could earn contribution points by sweeping the grounds, that didn't mean that one could earn contribution points just by sweeping the grounds. Furthermore, such a large peach orchard couldn't be left unattended. After every disciple of the Peach Garden officially entered the Peach Garden, they would automatically obtain a large number of servants to serve them. Basically, as long as they wanted to, they could even have someone feed them their meals. Moreover, they were all first-rate beauties. It had to be known that although a servant was a servant, it also depended on where it was. This was the Peach Garden, a dignified, true saint orthodoxy. Looking at the myriad heavens and myriad worlds, they were existences that stood at the peak. If any servant of the Peach Garden was casually thrown out, no matter what they did, they would attract countless outside cultivators. Many of them would fight over this, and there would even be cultivators from great clans. Thus, although they were servants, they absolutely couldn't be looked at with ordinary eyes. As she spoke of beauties, although Lei Xiaoyu had already extinguished some thoughts, she still subconsciously stared at Qinyu. What satisfied her was that Qinyu's expression was calm, as if he didn't care at all. That's right, just what sort of eyesight did Big Brother Qin have? Even she couldn't, humph, much less these common women. But even so, a man's mentality could change at will. He might not care about it now, but what if one day he had thoughts he shouldn't have? Lei Xiaoyu felt that she had an obligation and a responsibility to help Qin Yu avoid any future mistakes he might make. She lightly coughed and said, "Big brother Qin, you have just arrived, so there must be many things you need to sort out. As for the preparations for the servants, let me help you. Don't worry, I've done this before and I have experience. I'm sure you will be satisfied with the people I choose." Qin Yu glanced at her and secretly shook his head. This girl's little thoughts couldn't be hidden from him. Since she was willing, he would let her do as she pleased. In any case, Qin Yu had never had any thoughts about this to begin with. "All right then, I'll have to trouble senior apprentice sister." Lei Xiaoyu's face flushed red. Her helpless appearance was extremely cute. "Big brother Qin, you can't call me that in the future. In the peach garden, let's talk alone." As she spoke, she ran out. Qin Yu laughed out loud. This girl couldn't even take a joke. But in the future, he wouldn't be able to run away from calling her senior apprentice sister. After all, in the Peach Garden Holy Lands, there were still some rules to follow. Thinking of this, Qin Yu's smile stiffened. He rubbed his nose. In the past, he never imagined that there would be a day when he would have to call Lei Xiaoyu's senior apprentice sister. TSK. Thinking about this matter, it really was a bit embarrassing. But soon, Qin Yu tossed aside this awkwardness. Since this was the truth, there was no point in thinking about it any further. Qin Yu closed his eyes and began to recall everything that Lei Xiaoyu had told him. She had told him many times that the Peach Garden was different from the outside world, and that the honorable master, senior apprentice brothers, and senior apprentice sisters all got along well with each other. Today's experiences had made Qin Yu feel relaxed and different. But this didn't mean that he truly believed her. In the world, what one saw might not necessarily be true, much less what one heard from others. Although Qin Yu believed that Lei Xiaoyu wouldn't lie to him, this girl was simple to begin with. What she saw might not necessarily be true. In short, Qin Yu needed to verify and make his own judgment before he could decide how to position the people of the Peach Garden. He thought back several times and drew a vague image of the people of the Peach Garden in his mind, placing down several temporary labels. All that was left was to constantly enrich them in the future and then delete or replace the labels. Schwa. Qin Yu opened his eyes and took several steps forward. He pushed open the door and entered the room. Without much effort, he found the booklet that Lei Xiaoyu had mentioned, the one that recorded how to earn contribution points. The contents were indeed very detailed. As he flipped through the pages, he could see a thick book of words. Qin Yu was pleasantly surprised. He was only worried that he didn't understand enough. So how could he think that the booklet was too complicated? He sat down and carefully flipped through the entire booklet. When he closed the last page, Qin Yu let out a long breath. Just as the yard owner had said, there were many ways to earn contribution points. There were hundreds of ways recorded in this booklet alone. For instance, the cleaning method mentioned before. The peach garden had peach trees. This wasn't nonsense, but a fact. Not only did they exist, but there were many of them. Enveloped by the aura of a true saint's great Tao, they bloomed all year round. This caused layers upon layers of peach blossoms to fall on the ground. These things had absorbed a trace of a saint's aura. Although it was incomparably weak, it wasn't something that ordinary cultivators could handle. The disciples of the Peach Garden had obtained peach blossom marks and were recognized by the Peach Garden. Thus, the task of cleaning up the fallen peach blossoms was mostly done by them. Of course, this wasn't a good job. Not only did it take up a lot of time, but the contribution points it gave were far too low. Basically, no one wanted to do it, so everyone drew straws to see their luck. In comparison, searching for precious materials, hunting powerful monsters, helping their masters refine items, or even cultivating new peach trees would give far more contribution points. So, where should he start earning contribution points? Qin Yu pondered. Chapter 1209. The old turtle didn't continue to make things difficult for Qin Yu. According to what he said, "Master, please don't be angry. I wasn't sure just what sort of person you were before, so I held back. In the endless sea, in order to catch a spirit body for me, I caused Master to suffer and almost lost his life. I was so touched that I couldn't accept it. You are such a good master, so I have to hold on to your thigh and never let go. I will tell you everything I know so that Master's cultivation can be smooth sailing. In short, it was all sorts of flattery and flattery. At the same time, he regretted his previous actions. If it weren't for Qin Yu's impatience, then with the old turtle's attitude, it wouldn't have been a problem for him to speak for another 3 days and 3 nights. Shut up. If you have something to say, then say it. Thus, the old turtle began to speak about the opposition between light and darkness, the relationship between the evolution of the world's source and the rules of the world, and so on. Qin Yu's eyes brightened. At this moment, he suddenly realized why the little blue lamp had always regarded the old turtle with such importance. In the dark abyss, the little blue lamp had likely known that Qin Yu would rush into the icy sea and die 9 times out of 10, so it had tacitly approved of his actions. All of this was to smoothly bring the old turtle back to the vast young world. Perhaps he already knew the true value of the old turtle. The source of the world was too far away, so he couldn't talk about it for now. But the matter of light and darkness as one was the greatest problem that Qin Yu was currently facing. Although he had already grasped light and darkness and had comprehended the transformation between light and darkness as one, comprehending it didn't mean he could completely grasp the strength contained within. If Qin Yu wanted to completely control the power of light and darkness by himself, then disregarding whether or not he could reach such a degree, even if he could, he would still need to spend a massive amount of time. But if he had the guidance of the old turtle, then there was a chance that the situation would be completely different. Anyone could speak empty words. Qin Yu would at most believe 30% or 20% of it. Unless the old turtle was tired of living, there was no way he would lie to him about this. But this was still an important matter. Only by personally verifying it could he be sure. The truth was that the old turtle wasn't lying. He didn't know a great deal. Qin Yu began to cultivate faster. Contribution points were important, but in Qin Yu's eyes, they weren't as important as the guidance of the old turtle. Without accident, if he concentrated on cultivating for a period of time, his strength would inevitably rise by leaps and bounds. Putting everything else aside, as long as Qin Yu could fully master the integration of light and darkness, he could easily crush a God-state warrior. The God realm included the original spirit realm. According to the old turtle, the God realm was the God realm. Why did it have so many twists and turns? Those who couldn't see the sea were trash. Those who could see the sea but couldn't enter it were even more trash. Only those who stepped into the sea and began their journey to the unknown shore could be considered as the #1 figure in the world. Of course, he could barely be considered a top-notch figure. The old turtle's words were boastful, enough to suffocate tens of thousands of people to death. But Qin Yu didn't have the mood to care whether or not he was boasting. Like a dry sponge, he absorbed the narration from the old tortoise ravenously. Every time he solved a problem and understood a link, he would feel that he was suddenly enlightened and that he could see the sun after all the clouds had been dispelled. When Qin Yu first entered the peach garden, he plunged into the sea of cultivation, not willing to leave. In this sort of situation, it was far too troublesome to find all sorts of methods to earn contribution points. He didn't even have enough time to cultivate, so where would he have the mind to do anything else? During the intervals between cultivation, Qin Yu began to have a headache. This was because living in the peach garden also required contribution points. That's right. This rule alone clearly explained the saying that the peach garden didn't raise idlers. The booklet had detailed records. The peach garden was the place where the master of the peach garden forged his Tao and was protected by the great Tao of the saints. It was a heavenly paradise in itself. Ordinary cultivators would cry and kowtow, but they still wouldn't be able to enter. The disciples of the peach garden lived here every day, so they naturally had to pay a price for this. Luckily, the required contribution points weren't too high. Qin Yu thought about it and discovered that clearing out the peach blossoms earned him enough contribution points. He was overjoyed. Clearing out the peach blossoms was great. He didn't need to expend any energy at all. In fact, he could even cultivate the power of light and darkness while clearing out the peach blossoms. Of course, it would affect him a little, but this was undoubtedly the best choice he could make. The only problem was that clearing out the peach blossoms, according to the rules of the peach garden, was decided by each disciple by drawing lots. In other words, if Chinyu wanted to cultivate in peace, he had to find a way to change this rule and take on the task of clearing out the peach blossoms by himself. He had to do it. Chinyu immediately contacted his two senior apprentice brothers, 5th and 6th. Iron Mountain and Earth Traveler soon rushed over. The two of them were ordered by their eldest senior apprentice brother to take care of their youngest junior apprentice brother, so they didn't dare to neglect their duties. Of course, they were also worried that their youngest junior apprentice brother had encountered an accident and needed their help. When they first arrived, the two of them looked Chinyu up and down several times. They discovered that his arms and legs were fine, and he wasn't bruised or swollen. He didn't look like what they had expected. How should he put it? Chinyu was sure that he could sense surprise, relief, and even a little disappointment in their eyes. Speaking of which, Chinyu could accept surprise and relief. But what the hell was disappointment? These two senior apprentice brothers were too unreliable. As if sensing something, Iron Mountain coughed lightly and smiled. Youngest junior apprentice brother, what business do you have with us? This smile, this warm gaze, and this tall and sturdy body made one feel an overwhelming sense of security. It was so warm that it couldn't be any warmer. But after witnessing his 5th senior apprentice brother's flirtatious actions, Chinyu wouldn't be fooled by his appearance. This person had many tricks up his sleeves. Compared to him, 6th senior apprentice brother looked clever, but the truth was that he was constantly tricked. However, according to Lei Xiaoyu, 6th senior apprentice brother and 5th senior apprentice brother had a close relationship, and they were basically inseparable. Could it be that 5th senior apprentice brother had masochistic tendencies? Otherwise, they would have already fallen out with each other, and it wouldn't have been too much to fight. He was overthinking things. Chinyu gathered his thoughts. He cupped his hands together and bowed. Greetings, senior apprentice brothers. I took the liberty to invite you here today because there is something I would like to discuss with you. He thought for a moment and discovered that there really wasn't a good excuse for this matter. Perhaps it would be better to speak frankly. Facing 5th and 6th senior apprentice brothers' eyes, Chinyu continued to say, "It's like this. When I was in the Endless Sea, I had some harvests and I need to concentrate on cultivating for a period of time. But living in the garden also requires contribution points. I don't want to take on other missions in order to avoid delaying my time. Thus, I would like to discuss with my senior apprentice brothers and sisters and have them hand over the task of cleaning up the peach blossoms to me." Tu Xing let out an ah sound. "I see." He dragged out his words, and his eyes turned. "Junior apprentice brother, you should know that in our garden, there are some rules that we follow. It isn't good to suddenly change something that has already been agreed upon." Iron Mountain slapped him. With a dull thud, the thin and withered 6th senior apprentice brother suddenly became even shorter. "Junior apprentice brother, if you are willing to take over, then cleaning up the peach blossoms is a good thing. Don't play around with this matter. Don't forget, junior apprentice sister Chi hates this matter the most. If you mess things up and she gets beaten up, don't blame me for not reminding you today." Tu Xing shrunk his neck. He dryly laughed and said, "5th senior apprentice brother, what are you saying? I didn't mean that at all. You were just too narrow-minded." He pulled out his foot from the soil and slapped his chest in guarantee. "Junior apprentice brother, rest assured. This is the first time you have asked me to do something, so I will definitely do it for you. In the future, cleaning up the peach blossoms will be left to you alone." Chinyu cupped his hands across his chest. "Thank you, 6th senior apprentice brother." Then, he smiled at Iron Mountain and nodded to express his thanks. Things really went smoothly. It was unknown what the 5th and 6th senior apprentice brothers said to each other, but after learning that their new junior apprentice brother had taken the initiative to take on the task of cleaning up the peach blossoms, the senior apprentice brothers and senior apprentice sisters were satisfied. On this day, Qin Yu was cleaning up the peach blossoms. On the surface, his movements seemed calm and natural, but his eyes were in an absent-minded state. He was only mechanically cleaning up. Suddenly, a fragrant wind blew past him. It smelled too good, so good that even the absent-minded Qin Yu was drawn back to reality. When he looked up, he saw that at some unknown time, a beautiful woman had appeared in front of him. She wore an exquisite and gorgeous white dress, and her red lips were moist and alluring. She was looking at him with great interest, her face full of smiles. Everyone loved beauty, and Qin Yu was no exception. As a man with a normal sexual orientation and physiology, it was inevitable that his mind would wander for a moment and his eyes would pause for a moment. Thus, the smile on the beautiful woman's face became increasingly brilliant. It was clear that she enjoyed Qin Yu's reaction. Junior apprentice brother is truly extraordinary. Even something as dull and boring as cleaning up the peach blossoms can be done with such rapt attention. It seems you really like it. If so, then I, your senior apprentice sister, can rest assured. If I didn't personally come and take a look, I would have felt a bit guilty. Qin Yu immediately responded. He cupped his hands together and bowed. Qin Yu greets 7th senior apprentice sister. There were 3 female disciples in the peach blossom garden. There was no need to mention Peach Girl and Lei Xiaoyu, but the one in front of him was the mysterious 7th senior apprentice sister who was said to have a different beautiful face every time she appeared. The 7th senior apprentice sister smiled. Be a good boy. If anyone dares to bully you in the future, just say my name and I will protect you. That's right, senior apprentice sister's name is Kai Sang. Isn't that a nice name? Remember it well. She waved her hand. The 7th senior apprentice sister, who was called Kai Sang, turned and left. Her figure was even more enchanting, so beautiful that it would cause a nosebleed. It seemed that the reason she came here was just to see Qin Yu. Once she saw him, she would feel at ease, and then she could leave. She came and went without leaving anything behind. Well, it wasn't as if she didn't obtain anything. At the very least, Qin Yu had inexplicably been shrouded by a big shot. From the conversation between 5th senior apprentice brother and 6th senior apprentice brother, it wasn't difficult to draw a conclusion. Although she was ranked towards the back, this 7th senior apprentice sister was definitely a powerful figure amongst the disciples of the Peach Blossom Garden. The second to arrive was Lei Xiaoyu. Well, to be more precise, after the 7th senior apprentice sister left, she welcomed the 8th senior apprentice sister. What a painful realization. Lei Xiaoyu's eyes widened as she stared at Qin Yu, a puzzled expression on her face. Big brother Qin, just what are you thinking? Why do you want to accept all the missions to clean up peach blossoms? I already left a message for you in my booklet. No one likes to do this sort of thing, and the contribution points given are too few. It's simply a waste of time. Qin Yu smiled. I have to cultivate during this period of time, so I really don't have time to do anything else. Moreover, I just joined the Peach Blossom Garden, so helping out my senior apprentice brothers and sisters with some tasks is also a good way to leave a good impression. Big brother Qin, you don't need to do this. I already told you that the senior apprentice brothers and sisters in the garden are easy to get along with, so you don't need to do this. As she spoke, she tried to pull him back. Lei Xiaoyu bit her lips and said, Let's go. I will bring you to find my senior apprentice brothers and sisters and explain things to them. We can't delay your cultivation. Qin Yu pulled her back, his smile undiminished. Xiaoyu, I really did this voluntarily. No senior apprentice brother or sister forced me, so don't think too much about it. He looked at the peach blossoms on the tree and then at the thick layer of flower petals covering the ground. His tone became even more leisurely. The peach trees of the Peach Blossom Garden are all stained with Master's Holy Tao aura. Cleaning up these fallen flowers is also a way for me to approach Master's great Tao. It is also a kind of cultivation. Pa. Amidst the applause, Bai Feng appeared with a smile. As she looked at Qin Yu, her eyes were full of praise. Junior apprentice brother is so young, yet you are able to understand the principles of cultivation. It's no wonder you have your current cultivation. Qin Yu and Lei Xiaoyu bowed. Greetings, 3rd senior apprentice brother. You may rise. Bai Feng nodded. She turned to look at the little black snake that was crawling on her shoulder, twisting left and right in discomfort. She revealed a helpless smile and said, Azure Dragon, junior apprentice Brother Chin Yu wholeheartedly cultivates. So how could he possibly bully you? You must be overthinking things. Remember to be close to junior apprentice Brother Chin Yu in the future and don't stir up any more trouble. The shrunken Azure Dragon felt extremely wronged. You didn't even ask me anything. So how do you know he didn't bully me? And what did those last words mean? Stir up trouble? Who stirred up trouble? It wanted to shout out loud and call Chin Yu out to confront it and have Chin Yu say whether or not he had struck its head with his finger. But for some unknown reason, as soon as the Azure Dragon saw Chin Yu, it felt flustered. It knew that with Bai Feng here, Chin Yu wouldn't dare to touch it, but it still felt flustered. The Azure Dragon's heart was filled with sorrow. Could it be that it was actually a trash dragon that bullied the weak and feared the strong? Otherwise, how could it be like this? Lei Xiaoyu glared at the Azure Dragon, who was still immersed in sorrow. Feeling her glare, the Azure Dragon became even more distressed. Did this surname, Qin, know some sorcery? Why was it that as soon as he arrived, Lei Xiaoyu was no longer close to it? And even Bai Feng's attitude had changed. If it was sad, it would never love again. Then, it would turn into shards of glass and scatter into the icy cold bottom of the lake, never to see the light of day again. The Azure Dragon, who was filled with bitterness, didn't have time to continue feeling sorry for itself before it was grabbed by Lei Xiaoyu. Lei Xiaoyu smiled and said, If third senior apprentice brother came to look for Qin, junior apprentice brother, there must be something. I will bid my farewells first. Lei Xiaoyu's face flushed red. She didn't dare to look at Qin Yu's face and hurriedly left with the Azure Dragon. Bai Feng chuckled. This little girl Xiaoyu is becoming increasingly clever. But the reason I came here today is because there is something I would like to ask junior apprentice brother about. As he spoke to her, he blinked. So, junior apprentice brother, don't misunderstand. I really didn't bring the Azure Dragon here to seek revenge. Chapter 12:10. Qin Yu nearly choked on his own saliva. What was the meaning of this third senior apprentice brother's words? Was he trying to subtly remind him that the truth was that he had come here to seek revenge? Looking at Bai Feng in front of him, his smile was pure and warm, but Qin Yu still felt that something wasn't right. His thoughts raced several times, and he decided that he wouldn't bully the Azure Dragon anymore. This fellow was really doted on. There was no need to make himself uncomfortable. Qin Yu lightly coughed and changed the topic. He put down the tools he used to clean up the peach blossoms. May I ask why third senior apprentice brother is here? Bai Feng blinked her eyes. I heard that in order to celebrate junior apprentice brother moving into his new residence, junior apprentice sister gave him a bag of good tea. Qin Yu gestured with his hand. I don't understand much about the tea ceremony. Third senior apprentice brother came just in time. Let's have a taste together. Ha ha, then I won't be polite. After returning to the small courtyard, they sat down according to the host and guest. Qin Yu quickly brewed a cup and poured a cup for each of them. Third senior brother, please. Bai Feng picked it up and sniffed it. Then, she took a few sips and let out a long breath. Top-notch fog dragon tea. It's indeed enjoyable. Looking at his appearance, he was really enjoying it, and he wasn't faking it. Qin Yu smiled and rubbed his nose. Third senior apprentice brother is a true connoisseur. You were able to taste the origin of this tea with a single sip. As for me, I can't. I just think it tastes good. Leaving this fog dragon tea in my hands is a waste of time. I'll give the rest to senior apprentice brother. Bai Feng waved her hand. How could I take something that junior sister gave me? Besides, it's good to drink such top-grade tea leaves once or twice to satisfy one's craving. If I really get used to drinking it for a period of time, it'll be really uncomfortable if I run out of stock. I don't have the guts to open my mouth and ask Master for it. In our garden, only junior sister has the guts. She knew that Master wouldn't be willing to part with it, but she still pretended to be stupid and took it. Qin Yu was sure that this man wasn't pretending to decline. He thought for a moment and then said, Third senior apprentice brother, if you like it, then drink some more. Bai Feng put down the teacup. 1 cup is enough. He looked at Chinyu. Whether it was his eyes or his tone, they were both magnanimous and magnanimous. Junior apprentice brother, on the first day you entered the peach garden, I told you that I wanted to discuss the space laws with you. After a pause, a bitter smile appeared on his face. Of course, calling it a discussion is a bit unworthy of its name. After all, I'm just a beginner at most. In fact, I'm here to learn from Junior brother and see if he can help me avoid detours. Chinyu's heart skipped a beat. What was going on? How precious was the law of space? Such a thing was not something that could be casually taken out. I thought that I was just trying to strike up a conversation back then, but who knew that you would take it for real? Isn't this third senior brother a little too impolite? However, looking at his actions and demeanor, it was obvious that he wasn't embarrassed at all, as if it was only natural for him to do so. Was this the atmosphere in the garden? Chinyu hesitated. Not to mention how precious the space laws were. The key point was that he had no idea how to awaken them. After all, he had cultivated the azure finger and transformed step by step before finally awakening the power of space. If he wanted to say anything, he wouldn't be able to come up with anything useful. If he refused, wouldn't he anger third senior brother? According to Lei Xiaoyu, their honorable master didn't care about mundane matters. Eldest senior apprentice brother was in seclusion all year round, and second senior apprentice brother didn't come home. As for the affairs of the garden, they were basically managed by third senior apprentice brother. In other words, third senior apprentice brother was currently the one in charge of the peach garden. In the St. Tao rite, even if third senior apprentice brother had the authority, he still wouldn't dare to do anything. But if he really did offend him, there would definitely be a way to make fun of him. For a time, Chinyu was caught in a dilemma. As he was hesitating, Bai Feng suddenly clapped her hands, a look of understanding on her face. I was negligent. Junior apprentice brother just came to the peach garden and didn't know what was going on. It was my fault. The cultivation of us peach garden disciples has never been a secret. As long as it doesn't involve our own privacy, we will tell everyone. Helping our fellow disciples cultivate is one of the rules that Honorable Master set down long ago. Of course, we don't do it for free. Contribution points are a good method of payment. Bai Feng smiled. She suddenly stepped on the ground and said, "Sixth senior apprentice brother, it's quite stuffy underground. Come out and let's talk." Earth Elemental's head popped out from the ground. He rubbed his hands together in embarrassment. I'm just too embarrassed to show myself. After all, I haven't even touched upon the threshold of the space laws. As he spoke, he cupped his hands together and bowed to third senior apprentice brother. Then, he greeted Chinyu, junior apprentice brother. Third senior apprentice brother is right. If you don't feel at ease, you can ask your protector. He also knows. Without needing Chinyu to ask, he could feel it through the peach blossom mark. He could sense the fluctuations of thought coming from the peach tree in front of him. It was vague, but it was enough for Chinyu to understand its meaning. It was actually like this. The old turtle suddenly said, "Master, there is no need to feel awkward. In truth, this isn't anything at all." At this time, there was a knock on the door. After hearing the old turtle say a few words, Chinyu thought for a moment and stood up to open the door. Outside the door, Iron Mountain had a simple and honest smile on his face. "Junior apprentice brother, I took the liberty to disturb you. I would like to ask for a cup of fog dragon tea from you." Senior apprentice brother 5th and brother 6th, they really were inseparable. Chinyu reached out a hand and invited him in. But he didn't close the door. He turned to Bai Feng and said, "Third senior apprentice brother, I fear that the senior apprentice brothers and sisters in the garden are all interested in the space laws. How about calling everyone here today so that I can explain it to them together?" That's right. Chinyu was prepared to take out the supernatural art, the azure finger. Giving it to one person was one thing. Giving it to a group was also one thing. The reason he called everyone here was to earn a favor in person. Cough, cough. Didn't Bai Feng just say that exchanging cultivation experiences wasn't free of charge? Although Chinyu had decided to temporarily postpone earning contribution points, the truth was that there was no such thing as too much. Of course, before making this decision, Chinyu had communicated with the old turtle, so he had a general idea of what was going on. According to the old turtle, the azure finger was a great supernatural art that had the mark of the space laws engraved upon it. The first person to cultivate it to large success would be able to activate this mark and naturally grasp the power of space. But that was only limited to the first person. After Chinyu obtained the power of space, the mark of space engraved upon the azure finger had already vanished from sight. Of course, even if it disappeared, since this supernatural art could hide the mark of space, it was naturally related to the space laws. When other cultivators cultivated it, they could more or less obtain some insights from it. As for how much they could harvest, that would depend on their own luck and talent. Bai Feng smiled. Good, then we'll do as little junior apprentice brother says. I will call them over now. Lei Xiaoyu was the first to arrive. It seemed that even though she said she had left, she hadn't gone too far. The concern contained in her words warmed Qin Yu's heart. He gave her a look, indicating that she didn't need to worry. The azure dragon listlessly lay on her shoulder, maintaining its previous shrunken state. It seemed that it had likely been reprimanded. Seventh senior apprentice sister was the second to arrive. Her face had indeed changed, and even her fragrance was completely different. What was similar was that both faces were beautiful and the two fragrances were equally enticing. She first bowed to third senior apprentice brother and then smiled at Chinyu. Little junior apprentice brother, you're too kind. I've taken advantage of you today, but from now on I will truly protect you. What was the meaning of this? It seemed that everything she said before was just to brush him off. Chinyu was left speechless for a moment. He cupped his hands together in thanks, but it seemed that seventh senior apprentice sister's deterrence wasn't small at all. Hearing her say that she would protect Chinyu, third senior apprentice brother subconsciously glanced at her and then at Chinyu. Iron Mountain patted Earth Exalt's shoulder. With several loud bangs, half of Earth Exalt's body was forcefully smashed into the dirt. Old Sixth, hurry up and put away any thoughts of revenge. Otherwise, if you provoke seventh senior apprentice sister's anger, no one will be able to save you. Earth Exalt clenched his teeth. He thought to himself, I thank you for reminding me. If it weren't for you blatantly spouting nonsense, who would know of this matter? I won't lose face even if I give up. As for now, of course, it was ho-ho-ho. Seventh senior apprentice, Sister Kai, sang narrowed her beautiful eyes, her lips curling up in a charming smile. I heard that sixth senior apprentice brother fell to little junior apprentice brother's hands on the first day he arrived. This is big news. Is the dignified senior apprentice brother of the Peach Blossom Gardens sixth senior apprentice brother looking for trouble with little junior apprentice brother? Earth Exalt's face turned green. He waved his hand and said, No, absolutely not. This is all senior apprentice brother Iron Mountain's petty heart. Iron Mountain foolishly smiled and didn't speak. He clearly had an attitude of whatever you say, I won't argue with you. Peach Girl's arrival ended the atmosphere in the small courtyard. Bai Feng was startled for a moment before she stood up to welcome her. She smiled and said, Junior apprentice, Sister Peach Girl, you actually came? It seems that little junior apprentice brother's face is greater. Kai Sang and the others all restrained their auras and bowed respectfully. Greetings, fourth senior apprentice sister. Their appearance was like a mouse seeing a cat. Chinyu followed everyone in bowing. He was secretly surprised. He had heard Lei Xiaoyu mention some matters regarding Peach Girl, but he never imagined that she would have such a deterrent effect. Looking at the situation, it didn't seem to be because she was the garden master's first wife's daughter. Peach Girl had an indifferent expression. She swept her eyes over everyone and said, Rise. Then, she nodded towards third senior apprentice brother as a response. In truth, she hadn't said a single word, but everyone else was different. They were all used to this and didn't seem dissatisfied at all. Bai Feng smiled. In recent years, this is the first time that the disciples of our peach garden have gathered together. Elder senior apprentice brother and second senior apprentice brother have already comprehended the space laws, so it doesn't matter whether they come or not. Then, let's not delay any longer. She nodded towards Chinyu. Little junior apprentice brother, I'll leave the rest to you. Qin Yu controlled himself as much as possible. He didn't look too much at Peach Girl. He walked over to the peach tree and said, Senior Apprentice brothers and Senior Apprentice sisters might not believe me, but the truth is that I don't know how I obtained the power of space. Seventh Senior Apprentice sister blurted out, Is it your bloodline? Her eyes brightened as she stared at Qin Yu. Peach Girl's eyebrows furrowed slightly. If one didn't look carefully, it would be hard to notice. But she was well aware that as she looked at Kai Sang's eyes, she had a strange feeling in her heart. Why was it like this? She gathered her thoughts and erased the fluctuations in her mind. Then, her expression returned to its original indifference. In the small courtyard, everyone looked at Qin Yu with surprise in their eyes. That's right. The vast Yang world was vast and boundless. There were trillions of lives within it, and there was no lack of geniuses amongst them. There were indeed those who were born with a bloodline that resonated with space and were able to grasp the space laws upon reaching adulthood. This sort of life form was incomparably rare, but without exception, all of them possessed an extremely potent potential for growth. Basically, as long as they smoothly lived to adulthood, they would possess tyrannical strength. Could it be that Honorable Master had suddenly accepted Junior Apprentice brother into the garden because of this? Qin Yu didn't allow his Senior Apprentice brothers and sisters to think too much about it. He shook his head and said, I am only an ordinary human. I don't have such a formidable bloodline. As he spoke to hear, he had laid the groundwork. He lifted a hand and pointed a finger forward. When this finger landed, the place where the fingertip touched immediately set off ripples. Ripples spread out in the courtyard. These spatial fluctuations had negligible killing power. The disciples of the Peach Garden didn't resist at all, allowing them to rush towards them. Then, all of their eyes brightened. Bai Feng's eyes were the brightest. As someone who disliked lying the most, if he said that he had crossed the threshold in the power of space, then he really had. Thus, he was able to clearly sense the fluctuations caused by Qin Yu's finger. These spatial fluctuations certainly contained the power of space. Although this seemed like nonsense, the key point was that this was because the power of space was different. What was different was that these fluctuations weren't just stimulated by a formidable strength, but they also contained a strange fluctuation. This is... Bai Feng looked at Qin Yu with surprise. Qin Yu didn't care about what he was thinking. He nodded and said, Third Senior Apprentice brother has good eyesight. In my early years, I inadvertently obtained a supernatural power called the Blue Finger. As my cultivation rose, I cultivated this supernatural power to an even higher level, finally reaching large success. It was also after this supernatural power reached large success that I suddenly comprehended the space laws and was able to control the power of space. Bai Feng revealed a look of disbelief. Then, he sighed with emotion. A spatial mark. I thought it was something of legends, but I never imagined it would actually exist. Junior Apprentice brother's luck is truly deep. This is why he was able to obtain this supernatural power in his early years. He thought about how he had painstakingly cultivated the space laws for all these years and still hadn't been able to cross the threshold. But now, Qin Yu had only cultivated a single supernatural power and had officially stepped into it. No, it wasn't just that. Anyone that could leave behind a spatial mark was definitely not an ordinary existence. After Qin Yu fused with this mark, his comprehension of the Tao of space was destined to rapidly rise. It would only slow down once he approached the level of the person who left the mark. This was what Third Senior Apprentice brother truly envied. The courtyard was quiet. Even Bai Feng was envious. This group of people that hadn't even touched upon the threshold of the space laws were naturally even more envious. But whether it was envy or envy, from start to finish, there was nothing that made Qin Yu feel uneasy. This allowed him to relax a little. At the same time, he realized what Lei Xiaoyu had said. The Peach Garden was truly different from the outside. Kai Sang suddenly blinked. Junior Apprentice brother, did you call us here today to teach us this blue finger supernatural power? Qin Yu nodded. Yes. Kai Sang covered her mouth and smiled. her face bright and beautiful. Junior apprentice brother, seventh senior apprentice sister, is liking you more and more. Everyone was overjoyed. If the blue finger was able to contain a spatial mark, then it inevitably contained the mysteries of space. After cultivating it, it would be greatly beneficial to comprehending the space laws. Peach Girl suddenly said, "The blue finger is precious. Have you thought about the price?" After speaking, she didn't look at anyone else. She pushed open the door and left. Chapter 12:11. Umph. Peach Maiden is right. Your junior apprentice brother's supernatural power is indeed precious. A calm voice suddenly sounded out. The disciples of Peach Garden were startled. They quickly stood up and bowed. "Greetings, teacher." The air was quiet and there was no response. Everyone waited for a moment to determine that the honorable master had withdrawn his thoughts before standing up. Fine. With Peach Maiden's reminder and their honorable master's personal endorsement, Chinyu really would have to pay a high price for the blue finger. But at this time, no one felt dissatisfied. Instead, joy appeared in their eyes. Although their honorable master was a bit of a person sometimes, his strong point was that he was a dignified, true saint and wouldn't casually open his mouth. Since he said that the blue finger was precious, then it was certainly precious. After cultivating it, the assistance it would provide in perceiving the space laws would be far greater than they imagined. After a short discussion, by phone reported a number. After Chinyu heard this, he suddenly regretted it. If he knew that he could earn contribution points like this, why would he have accepted the mission to clean up the peach blossoms? He left behind a massive amount of contribution points and sent his senior apprentice brothers and sisters away. Then, he seriously considered the possibility of not cleaning up the peach blossoms. After hesitating again and again, he suppressed this idea. According to the rules of Peach Garden, as long as one had enough contribution points, they could stay in Peach Garden and eat their fill until they died. But as long as one accepted the mission, unless they faced an irresistible factor, they could only brace themselves and complete it. Whatever, there was no need to take such risks. He wasn't familiar with Peach Garden, so it was best to be careful. Following this, Chinyu's life was completely peaceful. Perhaps it was because everyone was perceiving the blue finger, but no one came to disturb him. Even Lei Xiaoyu, who had said she would come to speak with Chinyu, disappeared without a trace. Chinyu was happy to be in peace. Every day, besides taking time out to clean up the peach blossoms, he would immerse himself in cultivation. The more he listened to the old turtle's explanation, the more Chinyu rejoiced. Luckily, he had listened to the little blue lamp's suggestion and taken the risk of bringing the old turtle back to the vast Yang world. This fellow was simply an encyclopedia of cultivation. At least in the aspect of light and darkness, he only needed to think about any question Chinyu asked, and he would quickly give an answer. Not only was the answer fast, but it was also brilliant. Every time Chinyu answered, Chinyu felt as if he had been enlightened. His light and darkness cultivation made rapid progress. That was not all. What the old tortoise knew was not limited to the fusion of light and darkness. To be more precise, cultivating the power of light and darkness required a very wide range of knowledge. It was like an intricate and complicated question. Knowing only one aspect of knowledge was obviously not enough. One had to master all aspects in order to solve it step by step and finally get the correct answer. To Chinyu, cultivating the powers of light and darkness was the same as solving an incomparably complex problem. The road ahead was long and filled with endless clouds and fog. But the feeling of making progress every day and overcoming these difficulties was incomparably wonderful. Compared to the matters between men and women, this made Chinyu feel even more delighted and infatuated, almost to the point of being unable to extricate himself. Towards Chinyu's cultivation drive, the old turtle was secretly flabbergasted. He thought that the disparity between a normal person and a cultivation maniac was like the distance between the sun and the moon. It was simply unimaginable. But he still had to admire Chinyu. With Chinyu's age and achievements, It was rare for him to maintain such a firm and intense will to cultivate. Lei Xiaoyu finally came, but she didn't say too many words to Qin Yu before hurriedly leaving, saying that she was at a critical juncture in her cultivation. The reason she came here was to hand over the servant she had chosen to Qin Yu. Originally, this matter should have been completed long ago, but Lei Xiaoyu had been cultivating and had completely forgotten about it. Now that she finally remembered, she hurriedly sent the servant over. No more, no less, 100 people. All of them were men. Qin Yu's lips twitched. He thought that this little girl was quite ruthless. Although he didn't have any other thoughts, when he saw a beautiful girl, wasn't a bit more pleasing to the eye? Whatever. In any case, in his current state, besides cultivating, he was cleaning up peach blossoms. Even if a celestial immortal were in front of him, he still wouldn't be able to divert his attention. "Greetings, Mr. Knight." 100 servants bowed in greeting. Qin Yu nodded. "As for what needs to be done, do as you see fit. Just don't disturb my cultivation." With these words, he waved his hand and sent them away. The servants of the peach garden were indeed very good. Or it could be said that they were very diligent in their work. Qin Yu's days became increasingly relaxed. Besides cultivating and cleaning up peach blossoms, there were other trivial matters that didn't need any orders to be taken care of. Moreover, the servants clearly remembered Qin Yu's instructions on the first day. Unless he spoke, no one dared to approach him on their own initiative. However, Qin Yu discovered a small secret hidden amongst these servants. There was a woman hidden among them. She had an exquisite concealment technique. If it weren't for the old turtle reminding him, Qin Yu would have been immersed in his cultivation and wouldn't have noticed her. This discovery left Qin Yu speechless. He thought that Lei Xiaoyu had painstakingly chosen 100 large men to be his servants, but he never imagined that there would be a loophole that someone would exploit. However, this was it. It was only a woman. As long as she behaved herself, Qin Yu would pretend that he didn't know anything. But as his thoughts raced, he tossed this matter to the side. He didn't even have enough time to cultivate. So how could he have any spare thoughts to think about anything else? But just because Qin Yu wasn't willing to waste time didn't mean that things would develop according to his will. This woman mixed in with a group of large men indeed had ulterior motives. But what she wanted wasn't to seduce Qin Yu and climb into his bed, but to take his life. Around Qin Yu, darkness and light were suddenly released, forming two streams of energy that instantly condensed into a domain. The servant that broke into this domain struggled with all his might, but he couldn't move at all. Qin Yu awoke from his cultivation. He frowned as he looked at the servant in front of him. He immediately recognized that this was the woman that had mixed in. With killing intent in her heart, she actually caused the light and darkness domain to automatically activate to protect her master. It seemed that he had underestimated this woman's methods. "You want to kill me?" Qin Yu slowly said. "Why?" The woman's concealment technique was broken through by the light and darkness domain, revealing her original appearance. It was indeed pleasing to the eye. But even if she were 10 times more beautiful, it wouldn't change the fact that she wanted to kill Qin Yu. Although she had been thoroughly suppressed before she could do anything, the essence of the matter wouldn't change. With Qin Yu's personality, he wouldn't show any mercy to anyone that wanted to kill him, no matter who they were. The reason he kept her alive for questioning was because he wanted to find a reason. When he first entered Peach Garden, he couldn't think of a reason why this woman wanted to kill him. After all, Qin Yu had no grudge with the people of Peach Garden, nor did he have any connection with them. Something was wrong. Qin Yu's eyes suddenly exploded with a sharp light. He thought back to before he entered Myriad Soul Dao. There was a disciple of Peach Garden named Shang Lingyue among Eastern Zhouchali's followers. Could it be related to him? "I want to kill you because you deserve to die." The woman's eyes were filled with hate. Knowing that she would die, she fiercely glared at Qin Yu. This sort of resentful gaze. Qin Yu said, "You know Shang Lingyue?" As the woman heard this name, she struggled even more fiercely. "Yes, I want to take revenge for Big Brother Shang. You killed him. You killed him." Qin Yu had a calm expression. "He did die by my hands. I don't deny this, but how do you know?" The woman screamed, "Big Brother Shang is a secret disciple of Peach Garden, and his aura has already been recorded by Peach Garden. Of course I know you killed him. And it's not just me who knows, everyone else knows. But why would the Garden Master and the other teachers allow a murderer like you to live?" Her face was filled with madness and cruelty. No matter how beautiful her skin was, it was now twisted and ugly. They didn't care, so I did it myself. I want to take revenge for Big Brother Shang. You murderer, you must die. Qin Yu fell silent. He didn't think that killing Shang Lingyue was something that everyone in Peach Garden knew. It was simple. If a mere slave made new, then who could he hide it from? But whether it was the Garden Master or the disciples of Peach Garden, none of them mentioned this to Qin Yu. Was it because a mere secret disciple's death wasn't worth pitying, or did they already know something? Although he didn't know what it meant to have his aura recorded by Peach Garden, it at least showed that Shang Lingyue, a secret disciple, wasn't acting casually. In other words, the latter was more likely. Perhaps the Garden Master and the disciples of Peach Garden didn't mention it because they didn't want to. After all, with a saint's cultivation, it wasn't necessarily impossible for them to feel what happened to the cultivators of Peach Garden. A solemn disciple of a holy land, even if it was only a secret disciple, had actually degenerated to collude with abyssal life forms. This was an extremely disgraceful matter. Thinking of this, Qin Yu relaxed a little. His eyes fell on the woman in front of him, and he faintly said, "You should have asked others why the people of Peach Garden tacitly approved of my murder and didn't pursue it, right?" The woman's voice was shrill and shrill. "That's right. I asked the other teachers, but they didn't say anything. They only told me not to ask about this matter again. But Big Brother Shang died. He was a true genius and should have had an incomparably bright future. He should have even become Peach Garden's Miss Ninth, but he died. He was killed by you, and you stole his position. So I will kill you. I will definitely kill you and take revenge for Big Brother Shang." Qin Yu's eyes became increasingly cold. The one in front of him was only an ignorant and stupid woman. But this didn't mean that she wouldn't be responsible for her actions. This world was very fair. Before anyone did anything, they had to be prepared to bear the consequences. No one was an exception. Ignorance and stupidity weren't reasons that could be forgiven. Or, to be more ruthless, such a woman deserved to die. After all, this woman was able to activate the light and darkness domain to protect herself. Her assassination skills must be extremely terrifying. If it were someone else, they might have died in her hands without even realizing it. Wouldn't that be an injustice? Qin, you didn't have the desire to continue talking to her. I killed Shang Lingyue, but he deserved to die. No one told you the reason because his death wasn't honorable. Whether you believe it or not, you can reincarnate as a smart person in your next life. He raised his hand and pointed. The sneer and mockery on the woman's face suddenly froze, and her eyes dimmed. She fell to the ground softly. Although the woman didn't seem to have any injuries, her soul had been shattered. A calm voice sounded behind him. "I thought that you would spare her life. After all, strictly speaking, she was also very pitiful." Qin Yu turned around and bowed respectfully. "Disciple greets master." The yard master nodded. "Rise." Qin Yu stood up and paused for a moment. He said, "Master, although she was indeed pitiful, there are countless pitiful people in the world. She can't be unpunished because of this." Disciple came from a humble background. Throughout my path of cultivation, I have encountered many disasters and killed many people. My hands are stained with blood. Therefore, I gradually understood the principle that forgiving the enemy is disregarding one's own life. If I want to live, I have to kill them. Whoever wants to kill Disciple, Disciple will kill him, regardless of the reason or the past. In my opinion, this has nothing to do with being cruel or not. It's just a matter of fairness. The yard master looked calm. Fairness? You should know that there is no true fairness in this world. She paused for a moment, and her tone became even more indifferent. You are a disciple of the Peach Garden, my 9th disciple. Even if this woman was killed, she was killed. Even if her family knew about this, they wouldn't dare to seek revenge on you. What if you weren't a disciple of the Peach Garden, or even a person of the Peach Garden? Killing a servant of the peach garden is also a crime punishable by death. Then, will you still kill her? Qin Yu didn't hesitate. He said resolutely, "Kill her." The yard master glanced at him and didn't say anything. She turned around and took a step forward. Her figure disappeared. Qin Yu bowed. "Farewell, master." Standing up straight, Qin Yu looked calm as he looked in the direction the yard master had left. From the very beginning, he had been warned by the old turtle that the yard master's consciousness had descended. Therefore, when he decided to kill this woman, Qin Yu had already made preparations. Faced with the yard master's question, he chose to follow his heart and gave his own answer. After all, no matter how one looked at it, it was an extremely stupid thing to hide from a saint. Of course, it was impossible to pry into a saint's heart through his expression. Qin Yu also didn't know what kind of impression his actions today would leave on the yard master. He took a deep breath and slowly exhaled. Since things had come to this, it was useless to think too much about it. He could only let it be. The death of a servant didn't cause any disturbance in the peach garden at all. No one paid attention to it, or even if they noticed it, they chose to remain silent. Qin Yu's life didn't change much from before. After the initial uneasiness, he once again immersed himself in cultivation. However, it was undeniable that the yard master's words had some impact on Qin Yu. Just as he had said, killing a servant of the peach garden was also a crime punishable by death. Not to mention Shang Lingwei, the registered disciple. If Qin Yu hadn't coincidentally become the 9th lady of the peach garden, he would have been inevitably hunted down by the peach garden. In the end, a cultivator could only rely on his own strength. If he was strong enough to be a match for a saint, who would dare to hold him accountable? The integration of light and darkness and the complete mastery of their powers were the only way for Qin Yu to rapidly improve his cultivation in a short period of time. It was the only possibility for him to fight a saint head-on. The passage of time could not be traced. Therefore, Qin Yu had to cultivate. He had to cultivate even harder than before. Peach Girl pushed open the courtyard door, her expression indifferent and distant. Even when she saw the yard master in the room, her expression didn't change at all. She bowed. "Father." The yard master was all smiles. "You want to plant peach trees again? Don't work too hard. Rest when you need to." Peach Girl said lightly, "Father, is there something you need from me?" The yard master coughed softly. There's something. The old dragon in the East Sea insists on celebrating his birthday. The wedding invitations have already been sent to the yard. You know, that old dragon has liked you since you were young. He has told me several times that you must go in person." Peach Girl didn't even turn her head. "I'm not going." The yard master revealed a trace of embarrassment. "My dear daughter, I can't stand the old dragon's persistent pestering. I've already agreed. How about you go?" Looking at Peach Girl's silent back, the yard master thought for a moment. "Haven't you always liked the peach trees in the Kunlun Mountains? As long as you go this time, I'll help you get those peach trees, even if I have to throw away my dignity." Peach Girl finally turned around. "Okay." She paused, and her gaze fell on the yard master. What she meant was, "I've already agreed to go. Why are you still here?" The yard master forced a smile. "The East Sea is too far. I'm worried about you going alone. How about this? I've sent 2 wedding invitations. You can choose someone from the yard to go with you. Firstly, it'll show that we're being courteous. Secondly, he can accompany you so that you won't be lonely on the journey." Peach Girl was about to refuse, but she stopped herself. She nodded slowly. "Okay." The yard master's smile grew brighter. She placed the 2 jade archives on the table. "The invitations are here. You can choose whoever you want to go with you." He glanced at Peach Girl's expressionless face and smacked his lips. "I'll take my leave then." After the yard master left, Peach Girl's gaze fell on the 2 jade archives. Her gaze was deep, and no one knew what she was thinking. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.